Where's my phone? Hey, what's up, bro?
tribe in its proper place. For the present, I will only say that this landowner, for so we used to call him, although he hardly spent a day of his life on his
Guys, I'm gonna go
estate,
sleeping.
yet one frequently to be met with, a type abject, ambitious,
Oh
and at the
man,
same time senseless. But he was one of those senseless persons who are very well capable of looking after their worldly affairs and apparently after
jeez.
nothing else. Fyodor Pavlovitch, for instance, began with next to nothing. His estate was of the smallest. He ran to dine at other men's tables and fastened. Yet at his death it appeared that he had 100,000 rubles in hard cash. At the same time, he was all his life one of the most senseless, fantastical fellows in the whole district. I repeat, it was not stupidity. The majority of these fantastical fellows are shrewd and intelligent enough, but just senselessness and the peculiar national form of it. He was married twice and had 3 sons. The eldest, Dmitri, by his first wife, and 2, Ivan and Alexei, by his second. Fyodor Pavlovitch's first wife, Adalida Ivanovna, belonged to a fairly rich and distinguished noble family, also landowners in our district, the Musovs. How it came to pass that an heiress who was also a beauty, and moreover one of those vigorous, intelligent girls so common in this generation, but sometimes also to be found in the last, could have married such a worthless, puny weakling, as we all called him, I won't attempt to explain. I knew a young lady of the last romantic generation who, after some years of an enigmatic passion for a gentleman whom she might quite easily have married at any moment, invented insuperable obstacles to their union, and ended by throwing herself one stormy night into a rather deep and rapid river from a high bank, almost a precipice, and so perished, entirely to satisfy her own caprice, and to be like Shakespeare's Ophelia. Indeed, if this precipice, a chosen and favorite spot of hers, had been less picturesque, if there had been a prosaic flat bank in its place, most likely the suicide would never have taken place. This is a fact, and probably there have been not a few similar instances in the last 2 or 3 generations. Adelaida Ivanovna Musov's action was similarly, no doubt, an echo of other people's ideas, and was due to the irritation caused by lack of mental freedom. She wanted, perhaps, to show her feminine independence, to override class distinctions and the despotism of her family. And a pliable imagination persuaded her, we must suppose, for a brief moment, that Fyodor Pavlovitch, in spite of his parasitic position, was one of the bold and ironical spirits of that progressive epoch, though he was, in fact, an ill-natured buffoon, and nothing more. What gave the marriage piquancy was that it was preceded by an elopement, and this greatly captivated Adelaida Ivanovna's fancy. Fyodor Pavlovitch's position at the time made him especially eager for any such enterprise, for he was passionately anxious to make a career in one way or another. To attach himself to a good family and obtain a dowry was an alluring prospect. As for mutual love, it did not exist, apparently, either in the bride or in him, in spite of Adelaida Ivanovna's beauty. This was perhaps a unique case of the kind in the life of Fyodor Pavlovitch, who was always of a voluptuous temper and ready to run after any petticoat on the slightest encouragement. She seems to have been the only woman who made no particular appeal to his senses. Immediately after the elopement, Adelaida Ivanovna discerned in a flash that she had no feeling for her husband but contempt. The marriage accordingly showed itself in its true colors with extraordinary rapidity. Although the family accepted the event pretty quickly and apportioned the runaway bride her dowry, the husband and wife began to lead a most disorderly life, and there were everlasting scenes between them. It was said that the young wife showed incomparably more generosity and dignity than Fyodor Pavlovitch, who, as is now known, got hold of all her money up to 5,000 rubles as soon as she received it, so that those thousands were lost to her forever. The little village and the rather fine townhouse which formed part of her dowry, he did his utmost for a long time to transfer to his name by means of some deed of conveyance. He would probably have succeeded, merely from her moral fatigue and desire to get rid of him, and from the contempt and loathing he aroused by his persistent and shameless importunity. But, fortunately, Adelaida Ivanovna's family intervened and circumvented his greediness. It is known for a fact that frequent fights took place between the husband and wife, but rumor had it that Fyodor Pavlovitch did not beat his wife, but was beaten by her, for she was a hot-tempered, old, dark-browed, impatient woman, possessed of remarkable physical strength. Finally, she left the house, driven away from Fyodor Pavlovitch with the destitute divinity student, leaving Mitya, a child of 3 years old, in her husband's hands. Immediately, Fyodor Pavlovitch introduced a regular harem into the house and abandoned himself to orgies of drunkenness. In the intervals, he used to drive all over the province, complaining tearfully to each and all of Adelaida Ivanovna's having left him, going into details too disgraceful for a husband to mention in regard to his own married life. What seemed to gratify him and flatter his self-love most was to play the ridiculous part of the injured husband and to parade his woes with embellishments. One would think that you'd got a promotion, Fyodor Pavlovitch. You seem so pleased in spite of your sorrow, scoffers said to him. Many even added that he was glad of a new comic part in which to play the buffoon, and that it was simply to make it funnier that he pretended to be unaware of his ludicrous position. But, who knows, it may have been simplicity. At last, he succeeded in getting on the track of his runaway wife. The poor woman turned out to be in Petersburg, where she had gone with her divinity student, where she had thrown herself into a life of complete emancipation. Fyodor Pavlovitch at once began bustling about, making preparations to go to Petersburg, with what object he could not himself have said. He would perhaps have really gone, but having determined to do so, he felt at once entitled to fortify himself for the journey by another bout of reckless. And just at that time, his wife's family received the news of her death in Petersburg. She had died quite suddenly in a garret, according to one story, of typhus, or, as another version had it, of starvation. Fyodor Pavlovitch was drunk when he heard of his wife's death, and the story is that he ran out into the street and began shouting with joy, raising his hands to heaven. Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace. But others said he wept without restraint.
You're awesome!
So much so that
Eric Avolas donated MX 20元 for Super Chat. Mimi Endel.
it is quite possible that both versions
Thank you,
were
man.
true,
Thank you. I
that he
appreciate that.
rejoiced at his release,
You
and at
guys
the
wake
same
me
time
up.
wept for her who released him.
But thank you, bro.
As a general rule, people, even the wicked, are much more naive and simple-hearted than we suppose, and we are too. End of
Thank
section.
you, man.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 2 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 1, Chapter 2. He gets rid of his eldest son. You can easily imagine what a father such a man could be and how he would bring up his children. His behavior as a father was exactly what might be expected. He completely abandoned the child of his marriage with Adelaida Ivanovna, not from malice, nor because of his matrimonial grievances, but simply because he forgot him. While he was wearying everyone with his tears and complaints, turning his house into a sink of debauchery, a faithful servant of the family, Grigory, took the 3-year-old Mitya into his care. If he hadn't looked after him, there would have been no one even to change the baby's little shirt. It happened, moreover, that the child's relations on his mother's side forgot him too, at first. His grandfather was no longer living. His widow, Mitya's grandmother, had moved to Moscow and was seriously ill, while his daughters were married, so that Mitya remained for almost a whole year in old Grigory's charge and lived with him in the servant's cottage. But if his father had remembered him, he could not indeed have been altogether unaware of his existence. He would have sent him back to the cottage, as the child would only have been in the way of his debaucheries. But a cousin of Mitya's mother, Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov, happened to return from Paris. He lived for many years afterwards abroad, but was at that time quite a young man, and distinguished among the Musovs as a man of enlightened ideas and of European culture, who had been in the capitals and abroad. Towards the end of his life, he became a liberal of the type common in the 40s and 50s. In the course of his career, he had come into contact with many of the most liberal men of his epoch, both in Russia and abroad. He had known Proudhon and Bakunin personally, and in his declining years was very fond of describing the 3 days of the Paris Revolution of February 1848, hinting that he himself had almost taken part in the fighting on the barricades. This was one of the most grateful recollections of his youth. He had an independent property, about 1,000 souls to reckon in the old style. His splendid estate lay on the outskirts of our little town, and bordered on the lands of our famous monastery, with which Pyotr Alexandrovich began an endless lawsuit almost as soon as he came into the estate, concerning the rights of fishing in the river or woodcutting in the forest, I don't know exactly which. He regarded it as his duty as a citizen and a man of culture to open an attack upon the clericals. Hearing all about Adelaida Ivanovna, whom he, of course, remembered, and in whom he had at one time been interested, and learning of the existence of Mitya, he intervened, in spite of all his youthful indignation and contempt for Fyodor Pavlovitch. He made the latter's acquaintance for the first time, and told him directly that he wished to undertake the child's education. He used, long afterwards, to tell, as a characteristic touch, that when he began to speak of Mitya, Fyodor Pavlovitch looked for some time as though he did not understand what child he was talking about, and even as though he was surprised to hear that he had a little son in the house. The story may have been exaggerated, yet it must have been something like the truth. Fyodor Pavlovitch was all his life fond of acting, of suddenly playing an unexpected part, sometimes without any motive for doing so, and even to his own direct disadvantage, as for instance in the present case. This habit, however, is characteristic of a very great number of people, some of them very clever ones, not like Fyodor Pavlovitch. Pyotr Alexandrovich carried the business through vigorously, and was appointed, with Fyodor Pavlovitch, joint guardian of the child, who had a small property, a house and land, left him by his mother. Mitya did, in fact, pass into his cousin's keeping, but as the latter had no family of his own, and after securing the revenues of his estates was in haste to return at once to Paris, he left the boy in charge of one of his cousins, a lady living in Moscow. It came to pass that, settling permanently in Paris, he too forgot the child, especially when the Revolution of February broke out, making an impression on his mind that he remembered all the rest of his life. The Moscow lady died, and Mitya passed into the care of one of her married daughters. I believe he changed his home a fourth time later on. I won't enlarge upon that now, as I shall have much to tell later of Fyodor Pavlovitch's first boy, and must confine myself now to the most essential facts about him, without which I could not begin my story. In the first place, this Mitya, or rather Dmitri Fyodorovich, was the only one of Fyodor Pavlovitch's 3 sons who grew up in the belief that he had property, that he would be independent on coming of age. He spent an irregular boyhood and youth. He did not finish his studies at the gymnasium. He got into a military school, then went to the Caucasus, was promoted, fought a duel, and was degraded to the ranks, earned promotion again, led a wild life, and spent a good deal of money. He did not begin to receive any income from Fyodor Pavlovitch until he came of age, and until then got into debt. He saw and knew his father, Fyodor Pavlovitch, for the first time on coming of age, when he visited our neighborhood on purpose to settle with him about his property. He seems not to have liked his father. He did not stay long with him, and made haste to get away, having only succeeded in obtaining a sum of money and entering into an agreement for future payments from the estate, of the revenues and value of which he was unable, a fact worthy of note upon this occasion, to get a statement from his father. Fyodor Pavlovitch remarked for the first time then, this too should be noted, that Mitya had a vague and exaggerated idea of his property. Fyodor Pavlovitch was very well satisfied with this, as it fell in with his own designs. He gathered only that the young man was frivolous, unruly, of violent passions, impatient and dissipated, and that if he could only obtain ready money, he would be satisfied, although only, of course, for a short time. So Fyodor Pavlovitch began to take advantage of this fact, sending him from time to time small doles, installments. In the end, when 4 years later Mitya, losing patience, came a second time to our little town to settle up once for all with his father, it turned out to his amazement that he had nothing, that it was difficult to get an account of him, that he had received the whole value of his property in sums indeed from Fyodor Pavlovitch, was perhaps even in debt to him, that by various agreements into which he had of his own desire entered at various previous dates, he had no right to expect anything more, and so on and so on. The young man was overwhelmed, suspected deceit and cheating, and was almost beside himself. And indeed, this circumstance led to the catastrophe, the account of which forms the subject of my first introductory story, or rather the external side of it. But before I pass to that story, I must say a little of Fyodor Pavlovitch's other two sons, and of their origin. End of section 2.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 3 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 1, Chapter 3. The Second Marriage and the Second Family. Very shortly after getting his 4-year-old Mitya off his hands, Fyodor Pavlovitch married a second time. His second marriage lasted 8 years. He took this second wife, Sofia Ivanovna, also a very young girl, from another province where he had gone upon some small piece of business in company with a Jew. Though Fyodor Pavlovitch was a drunkard and a vicious debauchee, he never neglected investing his capital and managed his business affairs very successfully, though no doubt not over scrupulously. Sofia Ivanovna was the daughter of an obscure deacon, and was left from childhood an orphan without relations. She grew up in the house of a general's widow, a wealthy old lady of good position, who was at once her benefactress and tormentor. I do not know the details, but I have only heard that the orphan girl, a meek and gentle creature, was once cut down from a halter in which she was hanging from a nail in the loft. So terrible were her sufferings from the caprice and everlasting nagging of this old woman, who was apparently not bad-hearted, but had become an insufferable tyrant through idleness. Fyodor Pavlovitch made her an offer. Inquiries were made about him, and he was refused. But again, as in his first marriage, he proposed an elopement to the orphan girl. There is very little doubt that she would not on any account have married him if she had known a little more about him in time. But she lived in another province. Besides, what could a little girl of 16 do about it, except that she would be better at the bottom of the river than remaining with her benefactress? So the poor child exchanged a benefactress for a benefactor. Fyodor Pavlovitch did not get a penny this time, for the general's widow was furious. She gave them nothing, cursed them both. But he had not reckoned on a dowry. What allured him was the remarkable beauty of the innocent girl. Above all, her innocent appearance, which had a peculiar attraction for a vicious profligate who had hitherto admired only the coarser types of feminine beauty. Those innocent eyes slit my soul up like a razor, he used to say afterwards with his loathsome snigger. In a man so depraved, this might, of course, mean no more than sensual attraction. As he had received no dowry with his wife, and had, so to speak, taken her from the halter, he did not stand on ceremony with her. Making her feel that she had wronged him, he took advantage of her phenomenal meekness and submissiveness to trample on the elementary decencies of marriage. He gathered loose women into his house and carried on orgies of debauchery in his wife's presence. To show what a pass things had come to, I may mention that Grigori, the gloomy, stupid, obstinate, argumentative servant, who had always hated his first mistress, Adelaida Ivanovna, took the side of his new mistress. He championed her cause, abusing Fyodor Pavlovitch in a manner little befitting a servant, and on one occasion broke up the revels and drove all the disorderly women out of the house. In the end, this unhappy young woman, kept in terror from her childhood, fell into that kind of nervous disease which is most frequently found in peasant women who are said to be possessed by devils. At times, after terrible fits of hysterics, she even lost her reason. Yet she bore Fyodor Pavlovitch two sons, Ivan and Alexei, the eldest in the first year of marriage and the second 3 years later. When she died, little Alexei was in his fourth year, and strange as it seems, I know that he remembered his mother all his life, like a dream, of course. At her death, almost exactly the same thing happened to the two little boys as to their elder brother, Mitya. They were completely forgotten and abandoned by their father. They were looked after by the same Grigori and lived in his cottage, where they were found by the tyrannical old lady who had brought up their mother. She was still alive and had not, all those 8 years, forgotten the insult done her. All that time she was obtaining exact information as to her Sophia's manner of life, and hearing of her illness and hideous surroundings, she declared aloud 2 or 3 times to her retainers, "It serves her right. God has punished her for her ingratitude." Exactly 3 months after Sophia Ivanovna's death, the general's widow suddenly appeared in our town and went straight to Fyodor Pavlovitch's house. She spent only half an hour in the town, but she did a great deal. It was evening. Fyodor Pavlovitch, whom she had not seen for those 8 years, came in to her drunk. The story is that instantly upon seeing him, without any sort of explanation, she gave him 2 good resounding slaps on the face, seized him by a tuft of hair, and shook him 3 times up and down. Then, without a word, she went straight to the cottage to the 2 boys. Seeing at the first glance that they were unwashed and in dirty linen, she promptly gave Grigori, too, a box on the ear, and, announcing that she would carry off both the children, she wrapped them just as they were in a rug, put them in the carriage, and drove off to her own town. Grigori accepted the blow like a devoted slave, without a word. When he escorted the old lady to her carriage, he made her a low bow and pronounced impressively that God would repay her for the orphans. "You are a blockhead all the same," the old lady shouted to him as she drove away. Fyodor Pavlovitch, thinking it over, decided that it was a good thing and did not refuse the general's widow his formal consent to any proposition in regard to his children's education. As for the slaps she had given him, he drove all over the town telling the story. It happened that the old lady died soon after this, but she left the boys in her will 1,000 rubles each for their instruction, and so that all be spent on them exclusively, with the condition that it be so portioned out as to last till they are 21, for it is more than adequate provision for such children. If other people think fit to throw away their money, let them. I have not read the will myself, but I heard there was something queer of the sort, very whimsically expressed. The principal heir, Yefim Petrovich Polyanov, the marshal of nobility of the province, turned out, however, to be an honest man. Writing to Fyodor Pavlovich, and discerning at once that he could extract nothing from him for his children's education, though the latter never directly refused, but only procrastinated, as he always did in such cases, and was indeed at times effusively sentimental, Yefim Petrovich took a personal interest in the orphans. He became especially fond of the younger, Alexei, who lived for a long while as one of his family. I beg the reader to note this from the beginning. And to Yefim Petrovich, a man of a generosity and humanity rarely to be met with, the young people were more indebted for their education and bringing up than to anyone. He kept the 2,000 rubles left to them by the general's widow intact, so that by the time they came of age, their portions had been doubled by the accumulation of interest. He educated them both at his own expense, and certainly spent far more than 1,000 rubles upon each of them. I won't enter into a detailed account of their boyhood and youth, but will only mention a few of the most important events. Of the elder, Ivan, I will only say that he grew into a somewhat morose and reserved, though far from timid, boy. At 10 years old, he had realized that they were living not in their own home, but on other people's charity, and that their father was a man of whom it was disgraceful to speak. This boy began very early, almost in his infancy, so they say at least, to show a brilliant and unusual aptitude for learning. I don't know precisely why, but he left the family of Yefim Petrovich when he was hardly 13, entering a Moscow gymnasium and boarding with an experienced and celebrated teacher, an old friend of Yefim Petrovich. Ivan used to declare afterwards that this was all due to the ardor for good works of Yefim Petrovich, who was captivated by the idea that the boy's genius should be trained by a teacher of genius. But neither Yefim Petrovich nor this teacher was living when the young man finished at the gymnasium and entered the university. As Yefim Petrovich had made no provision for the payment of the tyrannical old lady's legacy, which had grown from 1,000 to 2, it was delayed, owing to formalities inevitable in Russia, and the young man was in great straits for the first 2 years at the university, as he was forced to keep himself all the time he was studying. It must be noted that he did not even attempt to communicate with his father, perhaps from pride, from contempt for him, or perhaps from his cool common sense, which told him that from such a father he would get no real assistance. However that may have been, the young man was by no means despondent, and succeeded in getting work, at first giving sixpenny lessons, and afterwards getting paragraphs on street incidents into the newspapers under the signature of eyewitness. These paragraphs, it was said, were so interesting and piquant that they were soon taken. This alone showed the young man's practical and intellectual superiority over the masses of needy and unfortunate students of both sexes, who hang about the offices of the newspapers and journals, unable to think of anything better than everlasting entreaties for copying and translations from the French. Having once got into touch with the editors, Ivan Fyodorovich always kept up his connection with them, and in his latter years at the university, he published brilliant reviews of books upon various special subjects, so that he became well known in literary circles. But only in his last year he suddenly succeeded in attracting the attention of a far wider circle of readers, so that a great many people noticed and remembered him. It was rather a curious incident. When he had just left the university and was preparing to go abroad upon his 2,000 rubles, Ivan Fyodorovich published in one of the more important journals a strange article, which attracted general notice on a subject of which he might have been supposed to know nothing, as he was a student of natural science. The article dealt with a subject which was being debated everywhere at the time, the position of the ecclesiastical courts. After discussing several opinions on the subject, he went on to explain his own view. What was most striking about the article was its tone and its unexpected conclusion. Many of the church party regarded him unquestioningly as on their side, and yet not only the secularists, but even atheists joined them in their applause. Finally, some sagacious persons opined that the article was nothing but an impudent satirical burlesque. I mention this incident particularly because this article penetrated into the famous monastery in our neighborhood, where the inmates, being particularly interested in the question of the ecclesiastical courts, were completely bewildered by it. Learning the author's name, they were interested in his being a native of the town and the son of that Fyodor Pavlovich. And just then it was that the author himself made his appearance among us. Why Ivan Fyodorovich had come amongst us, I remember asking myself at the time with a certain uneasiness. This fateful visit, which was the first step leading to so many consequences, I never fully explained to myself. It seemed strange on the face of it that a young man so learned, so proud, and apparently so cautious should suddenly visit such an infamous house, and a father who had ignored him all his life, hardly knew him, never thought of him, and would not under any circumstances have given him money, though he was always afraid that his sons Ivan and Alexei would also come to ask him for it. And here the young man was, staying in the house of such a father, had been living with him for 2 months, and they were on the best possible terms. This last fact was a special cause of wonder to many others as well as to me. Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov, of whom we have spoken already, the cousin of Fyodor Pavlovich's first wife, happened to be in the neighborhood again on a visit to his estate. He had come from Paris, which was his permanent home. I remember that he was more surprised than anyone when he made the acquaintance of the young man, who interested him extremely, and with whom he sometimes argued, and not without an inner pang compared himself in acquirements. He is proud, he used to say. He will never be in want of pence. He has got money enough to go abroad now. What does he want here? Everyone can see that he hasn't come for money, for his father would never give him any. He has no taste for drink and dissipation, and yet his father can't do without him. They get on so well together. That was the truth. The young man had an unmistakable influence over his father, who positively appeared to be behaving more decently, and even seemed at times ready to obey his son, though often extremely and even spitefully perverse. It was only later that we learned that Ivan had come partly at the request of, and in the interests of, his elder brother, Dmitri, whom he saw for the first time on this very visit, though he had, before leaving Moscow, been in correspondence with him about an important matter of more concern to Dmitri than himself. What that business was, the reader will learn fully in due time. Yet even when I did know of this special circumstance, I still felt Ivan Fyodorovich to be an enigmatic figure, and thought his visit rather mysterious. I may add that Ivan appeared at the time in the light of a mediator between his father and his elder brother Dmitri, who was in open quarrel with his father and even planning to bring an action against him. The family, I repeat, was now united for the first time, and some of its members met for the first time in their lives. The younger brother, Alexei, had been a year already among us, having been the first of the three to arrive. It is of that brother, Alexei, I find it most difficult to speak in this introduction, yet I must give some preliminary account of him, if only to explain one queer fact, which is that I have to introduce my hero to the reader wearing the cassock of a novice. Yes, he had been for the last year in our monastery, and seemed willing to be cloistered there for the rest of his life. End of section 3.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 4 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky, translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Pearley. Book 1, Chapter 4, The Third Son, Alyosha. He was only 20. His brother Ivan was in his 24th year at the time, while their elder brother Dmitri was 27. First of all, I must explain that this young man, Alyosha, was not a fanatic, and, in my opinion at least, was not even a mystic. I may as well give my full opinion from the beginning. He was simply an early lover of humanity, and that he adopted the monastic life was simply because at that time it struck him, so to say, as the ideal escape for his soul, struggling from the darkness of worldly wickedness to the light of love. And the reason this life struck him in this way was that he found in it, at that time, as he thought, an extraordinary being, our celebrated elder, Sasima, to whom he became attached with all the warm first love of his ardent heart. But I do not dispute that he was very strange even at that time, and had been so, indeed, from his cradle. I have mentioned already, by the way, that though he lost his mother in his 4th year, he remembered her all his life, her face, her caresses, as though she stood living before me. Such memories may persist, as everyone knows, from an even earlier age, even from 2 years old, but scarcely standing out through a whole lifetime, like spots of light after darkness, like a corner torn out of a huge picture, which has all faded and disappeared except that fragment. That is how it was with him. He remembered one still summer evening, an open window, the slanting rays of the setting sun. That he recalled most vividly of all. In a corner of the room, the holy image, before it a lighted lamp, and on her knees, before the image, his mother, sobbing hysterically with cries and moans, snatching him up in both arms, squeezing him close till it hurt, and praying for him to the Mother of God, holding him out in both arms to the image as though to put him under the mother's protection. And suddenly a nurse runs in and snatches him from her in terror. That was the picture. And Alyosha remembered his mother's face at that minute. He used to say that it was frenzied but beautiful, as he remembered, but he rarely cared to speak of this memory to anyone. In his childhood and youth, he was by no means expansive and talked little indeed, but not from shyness or sullen unsociability. Quite the contrary, from something different, from a sort of inner preoccupation entirely personal and unconcerned with other people, but so important to him that he seemed, as it were, to forget others on account of it. But he was fond of people. He seemed throughout his life to put implicit trust in people, yet no one ever looked on him as a simpleton or naive person. There was something about him which made one feel at once, and it was so all his life afterwards, that he did not care to be a judge of others, that he would never take it upon himself to criticize, and would never condemn anyone for anything. He seemed, indeed, to accept everything without the least condemnation, though often grieving bitterly. And this was so much so that no one could surprise or frighten him, even in his earliest youth. Coming at 20 to his father's house, which was a very sink of filthy debauchery, he, chaste and pure as he was, simply withdrew in silence when to look on was unbearable. but without the slightest sign of contempt or condemnation. His father, who had once been in a dependent position, and so was sensitive and ready to take offense, met him at first with distrust and sullenness. He does not say much, he used to say, and thinks the more. But soon, within a fortnight indeed, he took to embracing him and kissing him terribly often, with drunken tears, with sottish sentimentality. Yet he evidently felt a real and deep affection for him, such as he had never been capable of feeling for anyone before. Everyone, indeed, loved this young man wherever he went, and it was so from his earliest childhood. When he entered the household of his patron and benefactor, Yefim Petrovich Polyanov, he gained the hearts of all the family, so that they looked on him quite as their own child. Yet he entered the house at such a tender age that he could not have acted from design nor artfulness in winning affection, so that the gift of making himself loved directly and unconsciously was inherent in him, in his very nature, so to speak. It was the same at school, though he seemed to be just one of those children who are distrusted, sometimes ridiculed, and even disliked by their schoolfellows. He was dreamy, for instance, and rather solitary. From his earliest childhood, he was fond of creeping into a corner to read, and yet he was a general favorite all the while he was at school. He was rarely playful or merry, but anyone could see at the first glance that this was not from any sullenness. On the contrary, he was bright and good-tempered. He never tried to show off among his schoolfellows. Perhaps because of this, he was never afraid of anyone. Yet the boys immediately understood that he was not proud of his fearlessness, and seemed to be unaware that he was bold and courageous. He never resented an insult. It would happen that an hour after the offense, he would address the offender or answer some question with as trustful and candid an expression as though nothing had happened between them. And it was not that he seemed to have forgotten or intentionally forgiven the affront, but simply that he did not regard it as an affront, and this completely conquered and captivated the boys. He had one characteristic which made all his schoolfellows, from the bottom class to the top, want to mock at him, not from malice, but because it amused them. This characteristic was a wild, fanatical modesty and chastity. He could not bear to hear certain words and certain conversations about women. There are certain words and conversations unhappily impossible to eradicate in schools. Boys, pure in mind and heart, almost children, are fond of talking in school among themselves, and even aloud, of things, pictures, and images of which even soldiers would sometimes hesitate to speak. More than that, much that soldiers have no knowledge or conception of is familiar to quite young children of our intellectual and higher classes. There is no moral depravity, no real corrupt inner cynicism in it, but there is the appearance of it, and it is often looked upon among them as something refined, subtle, daring, and worthy of imitation. Seeing that Alyosha Karamazov put his fingers in his ears when they talked of back, they used sometimes to crowd round him, pull his hands away, and shout nastiness into both ears, while he struggled, slipped to the floor, tried to hide himself without uttering one word of abuse, enduring their insults in silence. But at last they left him alone and gave up taunting him with being a regular girl. And what's more, they looked upon it with compassion as a weakness. He was always one of the best in the class, but was never first. At the time of Yefim Petrovich's death, Alyosha had 2 more years to complete at the provincial gymnasium. The inconsolable widow went almost immediately after his death for a long visit to Italy with her whole family, which consisted only of women and girls. Alyosha went to live in the house of 2 distant relations of Yefim Petrovich, ladies whom he had never seen before, On what terms he lived with them, he did not know himself. It was very characteristic of him, indeed, that he never cared at whose expense he was living. In that respect, he was a striking contrast to his elder brother Ivan, who struggled with poverty for his first 2 years in the university, maintained himself by his own efforts, and had from childhood been bitterly conscious of living at the expense of his benefactor. But this strange trait in Alyosha's character must not, I think, be criticized too severely, for at the slightest acquaintance with him, anyone would have perceived that Alyosha was one of those youths, almost of the type of religious enthusiast, who, if they were suddenly to come into possession of a large fortune, would not hesitate to give it away for the asking, either for good works or perhaps to a clever rogue. In general, he seemed scarcely to know the value of money, not, of course, in a literal sense. When he was given pocket money, which he never asked for, he was either terribly careless of it so that it was gone in a moment, or he kept it for weeks together, not knowing what to do with it. In later years, Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov, a man very sensitive on the score of money and bourgeois honesty, pronounced the following judgment after getting to know Alyosha. Here is perhaps the one man in the world who might leave alone without a penny in the center of an unknown town of 1,000,000 inhabitants, and he would not come to harm. He would not die of cold and hunger, for he would be fed and sheltered at once. If he were not, he would find a shelter for himself, and it would cost him no effort or humiliation. And to shelter him would be no burden, but, on the contrary, would probably be looked on as a pleasure. He did not finish his studies at the gymnasium. A year before the end of the course, he suddenly announced to the ladies that he was going to see his father about a plan which had occurred to him. They were sorry and unwilling to let him go. The journey was not an expensive one, and the ladies would not let him pawn his watch, parting present from his benefactor's family. They provided him liberally with money, and even fitted him out with new clothes and linen. But he returned half the money they gave him, saying that he intended to go third class. On his arrival in the town, he made no answer to his father's first inquiry why he had come before completing his studies, and seemed, so they say, unusually thoughtful. It soon became apparent that he was looking for his mother's tomb. He practically acknowledged at the time that that was the only object of his visit. But it can hardly have been the whole reason of it. It is more probable that he himself did not understand and could not explain what had suddenly arisen in his soul and drawn him irresistibly into a new, unknown, but inevitable path. Fyodor Pavlovitch could not show him where his second wife was buried, for he had never visited her grave since he had thrown earth upon her coffin, and in the course of years had entirely forgotten where she was buried. Fyodor Pavlovitch, by the way, had for some time previously not been living in our town. 3 or 4 years after his wife's death, he had gone to the south of Russia and finally turned up in Odessa, where he spent several years. He made the acquaintance, at first, in his own words, of a lot of low Jews, Jewesses, and Jewkins, and ended by being received by Jews high and low alike. It may be presumed that at this period he developed a peculiar faculty for making and hoarding money. He finally returned to our town only 3 years before Alyosha's arrival. His former acquaintances found him looking terribly aged, although he was by no means an old man. He behaved not exactly with more dignity, but with more effrontery. The former buffoon showed an insolent propensity for making buffoons of others. His depravity with women was not simply what it used to be, but even more revolting. In a short time, he opened a great number of new taverns in the district. It was evident that he had perhaps 100,000 rubles, not much less. Many of the inhabitants of the town and district were soon in his debt, and of course had given good security. Of late, too, he looked somehow bloated and seemed more irresponsible, more uneven, had sunk into a sort of incoherence, used to begin one thing and go on with another, as though he were letting himself go altogether. He was more and more frequently drunk. And if it had not been for the same servant, Grigori, who by that time had aged considerably too, and used to look after him sometimes almost like a tutor, Fyodor Pavlovitch might have gotten into terrible scrapes. Alyosha's arrival seemed to affect even his moral side, as though something had awakened in this prematurely old man, which had long been dead in his soul. Do you know, he used often to say, looking at Alyosha, that you are like her, the crazy woman? That was what he used to call his dead wife, Alyosha's mother. Grigori, it was, who pointed out the crazy woman's grave to Alyosha. He took him to our town cemetery and showed him, in a remote corner, cast iron tombstone, cheap but decently kept, on which were inscribed the name and age of the deceased and the date of her death, and below a four-lined verse, such as are commonly used on old-fashioned middle-class tombs. To Alyosha's amazement, this tomb turned out to be Grigori's doing. He had put it up on the poor crazy woman's grave at his own expense, after Fyodor Pavlovitch, he had often pestered about the grave, had gone to Odessa, abandoning the grave and all his memories. Alyosha showed no particular emotion at the sight of his mother's grave. He only listened to Grigori's minute and solemn account of the erection of the tomb. He stood with bowed head and walked away without uttering a word. It was perhaps a year before he visited the cemetery again. But this little episode was not without an influence upon Fyodor Pavlovitch, and a very original one. He suddenly took 1,000 rubles to our monastery to pay for requiems for the soul of his wife, but not for the second, Alyosha's mother, the crazy woman, but for the first, Adelaida Ivanovna, who used to thrash him. In the evening of the same day, he got drunk and abused the monks to Alyosha. He himself was far from being religious. He had probably never put a penny candle before the image of a saint. Strange impulses of sudden feeling and sudden thought are common in such types. I have mentioned already that he looked bloated. His countenance at this time bore traces of something that testified unmistakably to the life he had led. Besides the long, fleshy bags under his little, always insolent, suspicious, and ironical eyes, besides the multitude of deep wrinkles in his little fat face, the Adam's apple hung below his sharp chin like a great fleshy goiter, which gave him a peculiar, repulsive, sensual appearance. Add to that a long, rapacious mouth with full lips, between which could be seen little stumps of black, decayed teeth. He slobbered every time he began to speak. He was fond indeed of making fun of his own face, though I believe he was well satisfied with it. He used particularly to point to his nose, which was not very large, but very delicate and conspicuously aquiline. A regular Roman nose, he used to say. With my goiter, I've quite the countenance of an ancient Roman patrician of the decadent period. He seemed proud of it. Not long after visiting his mother's grave, Alyosha suddenly announced that he wanted to enter the monastery, and that the monks were willing to receive him as a novice. He explained that this was his strong desire, and that he was solemnly asking his consent as his father. The old man knew that the eldest Zosima, who was living in the monastery hermitage, had made a special impression upon his gentle boy. "That is the most honest monk among them, of course," he observed, after listening in thoughtful silence to Alyosha, and seeming scarcely surprised at his request. "So that's where you want to be, my gentle boy?" was half drunk, and suddenly he grinned his slow, half-drunken grin, which was not without a certain cunning and tipsy slyness. I had a presentiment that you would end in something like this. Would you believe it? You were making straight for it. Well, to be sure, you have your own 2,000. That's a dowry for you. And I'll never desert you, my angel. And I'll pay what's wanted for you there if they ask for it. But of course, if they don't ask, why should we worry then? What do you say? You know, you spend money like a canary, 2 grains a week. Do you know that near one monastery, there's a place outside the town where every baby knows there are none but the monks' wives living, as they are called. 30 women, I believe. I have been there myself. You know, it's interesting in its own way, of course, as a variety. The worst of it is it's awfully Russian. There are no French women there. Of course, they could get them fast enough. They have plenty of money. If they get to hear of it, they'll come along. Well, there's nothing of that sort here. No monks' wives. And 200 monks. They're honest. They keep the fasts. I admit it. So, you want to be a monk. And you know, I'm sorry to lose you, Alyosha. Would you believe it? I've really grown fond of you. Well, it's a good opportunity. You'll pray for us sinners. We have sinned too much here. I've always been thinking who would pray for me, and whether there's anyone in the world to do it. My dear boy, I'm awfully stupid about that. You wouldn't believe it. Awfully. You see, however stupid I am about it, I keep thinking, from time to time, of course, not all the while. It's impossible, I think, for the devils to forget to drag me down to hell with their books when I die. Then, I wonder, books? Where would they get them? What of? Iron hooks? Where do they forge them? Have they a foundry there of some sort? The monks in the monastery probably believe that there's a ceiling in hell, for instance. Now, I'm ready to believe in hell, but without a ceiling. It makes it more refined, more enlightened, more Lutheran, that is. And after all, what does it matter whether it has a ceiling or hasn't? But do you know, there's a damnable question involved in it. If there's no ceiling, there can be no hooks. And if there are no hooks, it all breaks down, which is not likely again, for then there would be none to drag me down to hell. And if they don't drag me down, what justice is there in the world? Il faudrait les inventer, those hooks, on purpose for me alone. For if you only knew, Alyosha, what a blackguard I am. But there are no hooks there, said Alyosha, looking gently and seriously at his father. Yes, yes, only the shadows of hooks. I know. That's how a Frenchman described hell. J'ai vu l'ombre d'un cocher qui, avec l'ombre d'une crosse, frappait l'ombre d'une carrosse. How do you know there are no hooks, darling? You've lived with the monks. You will sing it different too. But go and get at the truth there, then come and tell me. Anyway, it's easier going to the other world if one knows what there is there. Besides, it will be more seemly for you with the monks than here with me, with a drunken old man and young harlots. Though you're like an angel, nothing touches you. I dare say nothing will touch you there. That's why I let you go, because I hope for you. You've got all your wits about you. You will burn and you will burn out. You will be healed and come back again. And I will wait for you. I feel that you are the only creature in the world who has not condemned me. My dear boy, I feel it, you know. I can't help feeling it. And he even began blubbering. He was sentimental. He was wicked and sentimental. End of section 4.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 1, Chapter 5. Elders. Some of my readers may imagine that my young man was a sickly, ecstatic, poorly developed creature, a pale, consumptive dreamer. On the contrary, Alyosha was at this time a well-grown, red-cheeked, clear-eyed lad of 19, radiant with health. He was very handsome, too, graceful, moderately tall, with hair of a dark brown, with a regular, rather long, oval-shaped face, and wide-set, dark gray, shining eyes. He was very thoughtful, and apparently very serene. I shall be told, perhaps, that red cheeks are not incompatible with fanaticism and mysticism. But I fancy that Alyosha was more of a realist than anyone. Oh, no doubt in the monastery he fully believed in miracles, but to my thinking miracles are never a stumbling block to the realist. It is not miracles that dispose realists to believe. The genuine realist, if he is an unbeliever, will always find strength and ability to disbelieve in the miraculous. And if he is confronted with a miracle as an irrefutable fact, he would rather disbelieve his own senses than admit the fact. Even if he admits it as a fact of nature, till then unrecognized by him. Faith does not, in the realist, spring from the miracle, but the miracle from faith. If the realist once believes, then he is bound by his very realism to admit the miraculous also. The Apostle Thomas said that he would not believe till he saw, but when he did see, he said, "My Lord and my God." Was it the miracle forced him to believe? Most likely not. But he believed solely because he desired to believe, and possibly he fully believed in his secret heart, even when he said, "I do not believe till I see." I shall be told perhaps that Alyosha was stupid, undeveloped, had not finished his studies, and so on. That he did not finish his studies is true, but to say that he was stupid or dull would be a great injustice. I'll simply repeat what I have said above. He entered upon this path only because, at that time, it alone struck his imagination and presented itself to him as offering an ideal means of escape for his soul from darkness to light. Add to that he was to some extent a youth of our last epoch, that is, honest in nature, desiring the truth, seeking for it and believing in it, and seeking to serve it at once with all the strength of his soul, seeking for immediate action, and ready to sacrifice everything, life itself, for it. Though these young men unhappily fail to understand that the sacrifice of life is, in many cases, the easiest of all sacrifices, and that to sacrifice, for instance, 5 or 6 years of their seething youth to hard and tedious study, if only to multiply tenfold their powers of serving the truth and the cause they have set before them as their goal. Such a sacrifice is utterly beyond the strength of many of them. The path Alyosha chose was a path going in the opposite direction, but he chose it with the same thirst for swift achievement. As soon as he reflected seriously, he was convinced of the existence of God and immortality, and at once he instinctively said to himself, "I want to live for immortality, and I will accept no compromise." In the same way, if he had decided that God and immortality did not exist, he would at once have become an atheist and a socialist. For socialism is not merely the labor question, it is before all things the atheistic question, the question of the form taken by atheism today, the question of the Tower of Babel, built without God, not to mount to heaven from earth, but to set up heaven on earth. Alyosha would have found it strange and impossible to go on living as before. It is written, "Give all that thou hast to the poor, and follow me, if thou wouldst be perfect." Alyosha said to himself, "I can't give 2 rubles instead of all, and only go to Mass instead of following him." Perhaps his memories of childhood brought back our monastery, to which his mother may have taken him to Mass. Perhaps slanting sunlight and the holy image to which his crazy mother had held him up still acted upon his imagination. Brooding on these things, he may have come to us perhaps only to see whether here he could sacrifice all or only 2 rubles, and in the monastery he met this elder. I must digress to explain what an elder is in Russian monasteries, and I am sorry that I do not feel very competent to do so. I will try, however, to give a superficial account of it in a few words. Authorities on the subject assert that the institution of elders is of recent date, not more than 100 years old in our monasteries, though in the Orthodox East, especially in Sinai and Athos, it has existed over 1,000 years. It is maintained that it existed in ancient times in Russia also, but through the calamities which overtook Russia, the Tartars, civil war, the interruption of relations with the East after the destruction of Constantinople, this institution fell into oblivion. It was revived among us towards the end of the last century by one of the great ascetics, as they call him, Paisi Velичkovsky and his disciples. But to this day it exists in few monasteries only, and has sometimes been almost persecuted as an innovation in Russia. It flourished especially in the celebrated Kozelsky-Altin monastery. When and how it was introduced into our monastery, I cannot say. There had already been 3 such elders, and Zosima was the last of them. But he was almost dying of weakness and disease, and they had no one to take his place. The question for our monastery was an important one, for it had not been distinguished by anything in particular till then. They had neither relics of saints, nor wonder-working icons, nor glorious traditions, nor historical exploits. It had flourished and been glorious all over Russia through its elders, to see and hear whom pilgrims had flocked for thousands of miles from all parts. What was such an elder? An elder was one who took your soul, your will, into his soul and his will. When you choose an elder, you renounce your own will and yield it to him in complete submission, complete self-abnegation. This novitiate, this terrible school of abnegation, is undertaken voluntarily in the hope of self-conquest, of self-mastery, in order, after a life of obedience, to attain perfect freedom, that is, from self, to escape the lot of those who have lived their whole life without finding their true selves in themselves. This institution of elders is not founded on theory, but was established in the East from the practice of 1,000 years. The obligations due to an elder are not the ordinary obedience, which has always existed in Russian monasteries. The obligation involves confession to the elder by all who have submitted themselves to him, and to the indissoluble bond between him and them. The story is told, for instance, that in the early days of Christianity, one such novice, failing to fulfill some command laid upon him by his elder, left his monastery in Syria and went to Egypt. There, after great exploits, he was found worthy at last to suffer torture and a martyr's death for the faith. When the church, regarding him as a saint, was burying him, suddenly, at the deacon's exhortation, "Depart all ye unbaptized," the coffin containing the martyr's body left its place and was cast forth from the church, and this took place 3 times. And only at last they learnt that this holy man had broken his vow of obedience and left his elder, and therefore could not be forgiven without the elder's absolution, in spite of his great deeds. Only after this could the funeral take place. This, of course, is only an old legend, but here is a recent instance. A monk was suddenly commanded by his elder to quit Athos, which he loved as a sacred place and a haven of refuge, and to go first to Jerusalem to do homage to the holy places, and then to go to the north to Siberia. There is the place for thee, and not here. The monk, overwhelmed with sorrow, went to the ecumenical patriarch at Constantinople and besought him to release him from his obedience. But the patriarch replied that not only was he unable to release him, but there was not and could not be on earth a power which could release him, except the elder who had himself laid that duty upon him. In this way, the elders are endowed, in certain cases, with unbounded and inexplicable authority. That is why, in many of our monasteries, the institution was at first resisted almost to persecution. Meantime, the elders immediately began to be highly esteemed among the people. Masses of the ignorant people, as well as men of distinction, flocked, for instance, to the elders of our monastery to confess their doubts, their sins, and their sufferings, and ask for counsel and admonition. Seeing this, the opponents of the elders declared that the sacrament of confession was being arbitrarily and frivolously degraded, though the continual opening of the heart to the elder by the monk or the layman had nothing of the character of the sacrament. In the end, however, the institution of elders has been retained and is becoming established in Russian monasteries. It is true, perhaps, that this instrument, which had stood the test of 1,000 years for the moral regeneration of a man from slavery to freedom and to moral perfectibility, may be a two-edged weapon, and it may lead some not to humility and complete self-control, but to the most satanic pride, that is, to bondage and not to freedom. The elder Zosima was 65. He came of a family of landowners, had been in the army in early youth, and served in the Caucasus as an officer. He had, no doubt, impressed Alyosha by some peculiar quality of his soul. Alyosha lived in the cell of the elder, who was very fond of him and let him wait upon him. It must be noted that Alyosha was bound by no obligation and could go where he pleased and be absent for whole days. Though he wore the monastic dress, it was voluntarily, not to be different from others. No doubt he liked to do so. Possibly his youthful imagination was deeply stirred by the power and fame of his elder. It was said that so many people had for years past come to confess their sins to Father Zosima and to entreat him for words of advice and healing, that he had acquired the keenest intuition and could tell from an unknown face what a newcomer wanted and what was the suffering on his conscience. He sometimes astounded and almost alarmed his visitors by his knowledge of their secrets before they had spoken a word. Alyosha noticed that many, almost all, went into the elder for the first time with apprehension and uneasiness, but came out with bright and happy faces. Alyosha was particularly struck by the fact that Father Zosima was not at all stern. On the contrary, he was almost always gay. The monks used to say that he was more drawn to those who were more sinful, and the greater the sinner, the more he loved him. There were, no doubt, up to the end of his life among the monks, some who hated and envied him, but they were few in number, and they were silent, though among them were some of great dignity in the monastery. One, for instance, of the older monks, distinguished for his strict keeping of fasts and vows of silence. But the majority were on Father Zosima's side, and very many of them loved him with all their hearts, warmly and sincerely. Some were almost fanatically devoted to him, and declared, though not quite aloud, that he was a saint, that there could be no doubt of it, and seeing that his end was near, they anticipated miracles and great glory to the monastery in the immediate future from his relics. Alyosha had unquestioning faith in the miraculous power of the elder, just as he had unquestioning faith in the story of the coffin that flew out of the church. He saw many who came with sick children or relatives and besought the elder to lay hands on them and to pray for them, return shortly after, some the next day, and falling in tears at the elder's feet, thank him for healing their sick. Whether they had really been healed or were simply better in the natural course of the disease was a question which did not exist for Alyosha, for he fully believed in the spiritual power of his teacher and rejoiced in his fame, in his glory, as though it were his own triumph. His heart throbbed, and he beamed, as it were, all over when the elder came out to the gates of the hermitage into the waiting crowd of pilgrims of the humbler class, who had flocked from all parts of Russia on purpose to see the elder and obtain his blessing. They fell down before him, wept, kissed his feet, kissed the earth on which he stood, and wailed, while the women held up their children to him and brought him the sick possessed with devils. The elder spoke to them, read a brief prayer over them, blessed them, and dismissed them. Of late, he had become so weak through attacks of illness that he was sometimes unable to leave his cell, and the pilgrims waited for him to come out for several days. Alyosha did not wonder why they loved him so, why they fell down before him and wept with emotion merely at seeing his face. Oh, he understood that for the humble soul of the Russian peasant, worn out by grief and toil, and still more by the everlasting injustice and everlasting sin, his own and the world's, it was the greatest need and comfort to find someone or something holy to fall down before and worship. Among us there is sin, injustice, and temptation, but yet somewhere on earth there is someone holy and exalted. He has the truth. He knows the truth. So it is not dead upon the earth. So it will come one day to us too, and rule over all the earth according to the promise. Alyosha knew that this was just how the people felt and even reasoned. He understood it, but that the elder Zosima was this saint and custodian of God's truth, of that he had no more doubt than the weeping peasants and the sick women who held out their children to the elder. The conviction that after his death the elder would bring extraordinary glory to the monastery was even stronger in Alyosha than in anyone there, and of late a kind of deep flame of inner ecstasy burnt more and more strongly in his heart. He was not at all troubled at this elder standing as a solitary example before him. No matter, he is holy. He carries in his heart the secret of renewal for all, that power which will at last establish truth on the earth, and all men will be holy and love one another, and there will be no more rich nor poor, no exalted nor humbled, but all will be as the children of God, and the true kingdom of Christ will come. That was the dream in Alyosha's heart. The arrival of his two brothers, whom he had not known till then, seemed to make a great impression on Alyosha. He more quickly made friends with his half-brother Dmitri, though he arrived later, than with his own brother Ivan. He was extremely interested in his brother Ivan, but when the latter had been 2 months in the town, though they had met fairly often, they were still not intimate. Alyosha was naturally silent, and he seemed to be expecting something, ashamed about something, while his brother Ivan, though Alyosha noticed at first that he looked long and curiously at him, seemed soon to have left off thinking of him. Alyosha noticed it with some embarrassment. He ascribed his brother's indifference at first to the disparity of their age and education. But he also wondered whether the absence of curiosity and sympathy in Ivan might be due to some other cause entirely unknown to him. He kept fancying that Ivan was absorbed in something inward and important, that he was striving towards some goal, perhaps very hard to attain, and that was why he had no thought for him. Alyosha wondered, too, whether there was not some contempt on the part of the learned atheist for him, a foolish novice. He knew for certain that his brother was an atheist. He could not take offense at this contempt if it existed. Yet with an uneasy embarrassment which he did not himself understand, he waited for his brother to come nearer to him. Dmitri used to speak of Ivan with the deepest respect and with peculiar earnestness. From him, Alyosha learnt all the details of the important affair which had of late formed such a close and remarkable bond between the two elder brothers. Dmitri's enthusiastic references to Ivan were the more striking in Alyosha's eyes, since Dmitri was, compared with Ivan, almost uneducated, and the two brothers were such a contrast in personality and character that it would be difficult to find two men more unlike. It was at this time that the meeting, rather gathering of the members of this inharmonious family, took place in the cell of the elder who had such an extraordinary influence on Alyosha. The pretext for this gathering was a false one. It was at this time that the discord between Dmitri and his father seemed at its acutest stage, and their relations had become insufferably strained. Fyodor Pavlovitch seems to have been the first to suggest, apparently in joke, that they should all meet in Father Zosima's cell, and that, without appealing to his direct intervention, they might more decently come to an understanding under the conciliating influence of the elder's presence. Dmitri, who had never seen the elder, naturally supposed that his father was trying to intimidate him, but as he secretly blamed himself for his outbursts of temper with his father on several recent occasions, he accepted the challenge. It must be noted that he was not, like Ivan, staying with his father, but living apart at the other end of the town. It happened that Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov, who was staying in the district at the time, caught eagerly at the idea. A liberal of the 40s and 50s, a free thinker and atheist, he may have been led on by boredom or the hope of frivolous diversion. He was suddenly seized with the desire to see the monastery and the holy man. As his lawsuit with the monastery still dragged on, he made it the pretext for seeing the superior, in order to attempt to settle it amicably. A visitor coming with such laudable intentions might be received with more attention and consideration than if he came from simple curiosity. Influences from within the monastery were brought to bear on the elder, who of late had scarcely left his cell and had been forced by illness to deny even his ordinary visitors. In the end, he consented to see them, and the day was fixed. "Who has made me a judge over them?" was all he said, smilingly, to Alyosha. Alyosha was much perturbed when he heard of the proposed visit. Of all the wrangling, quarrelsome party, Dmitri was the only one who could regard the interview seriously. All the others would come from frivolous motives, perhaps insulting to the elder. Alyosha was well aware of that. Ivan and Musov would come from curiosity, perhaps of the coarsest kind, while his father might be contemplating some piece of buffoonery. Though he said nothing, Alyosha thoroughly understood his father. The boy, I repeat, was far from being so simple as everyone thought him. He awaited the day with a heavy heart. No doubt he was always pondering in his mind how the family discord could be ended, but his chief anxiety concerned the elder. He trembled for him, for his glory, and dreaded any affront to him, especially the refined, courteous irony of Yusuf and the supercilious half-utterances of the highly educated Ivan. He even wanted to venture on warning the elder, telling him something about them, but on second thoughts said nothing. He only sent word the day before, through a friend, to his brother Dmitri, that he loved him and expected him to keep his promise. Dmitri wondered, for he could not remember what he had promised, but he answered by letter that he would do his utmost not to let himself be provoked by vileness, but that, although he had a deep respect for the elder and for his brother Ivan, He was convinced that the meeting was either a trap for him or an unworthy farce. Nevertheless, I would rather bite out my tongue than be lacking in respect to the sainted man whom you reverence so highly, he wrote in conclusion. Alyosha was not greatly cheered by the letter. End of section 5. Recording by Bruce Perry. Book 2, An Unfortunate Gathering. Chapter 1. They arrive at the monastery. It was a warm, bright day at the end of August. The interview with the elder had been fixed for 11:30, immediately after late Mass. Our visitors did not take part in the service, but arrived just as it was over. First, an elegant open carriage, drawn by 2 valuable horses, drove up with Miusov and a distant relative of his, a young man of 20, called Pyotr Fomich Kalganov. This young man was preparing to enter the university. Miusov, who was staying for the time, was trying to persuade him to go abroad to the University of Zurich, Jena. The young man was still undecided. He was thoughtful and absent-minded. He was nice-looking, strongly built, and rather tall. There was a strange fixity in his gaze at times. Like all very absent-minded people, he would sometimes stare at a person without seeing him. He was silent and rather awkward, but sometimes when he was alone with anyone, he became talkative and effusive, and would laugh at anything or nothing. But his animation vanished as quickly as it appeared. He was always well and even elaborately dressed. He had already some independent fortune and expectations of much more. He was a friend of Alyosha's. In an ancient, jolting but roomy hired carriage with a pair of old pinkish-gray horses, a long way behind Miusov's carriage, came Fyodor Pavlovich with his son Ivan. Dmitri was late, though he had been informed of the time the evening before. The visitors left their carriage at the hotel outside the precincts and went to the gates of the monastery on foot. Except Fyodor Pavlovich, none of the party had ever seen the monastery, and Miusov had probably not even been to church for 30 years. He looked about him with curiosity, together with assumed ease. But except the church and the domestic buildings, though these two were ordinary enough, he found nothing of interest in the interior of the monastery. The last of the worshippers were coming out of the church, bareheaded and crossing themselves. Among the humbler people were a few of higher rank, 2 or 3 ladies and a very old general. They were all staying at the hotel. Our visitors were at once surrounded by beggars, but none of them gave them anything, except young Kalganov, who took a 10-kopeck piece out of his purse and, nervous and embarrassed, God knows why, hurriedly gave it to an old woman, saying, "Divide it equally." None of his companions made any remark upon it, so that he had no reason to be embarrassed, but, perceiving this, he was even more overcome. It was strange that their arrival did not seem expected, and that they were not received with special honor, though one of them had recently made a donation of 1,000 rubles, while another was a very wealthy and highly cultured landowner, upon whom all in the monastery were in a sense dependent, as a decision of the lawsuit might at any moment put their fishing rights in his hands. Yet no official personage met them. Miusov looked absent-mindedly at the tombstones round the church, and was on the point of saying that the dead buried here must have paid a pretty penny for the right of lying in this holy place, but refrained. His liberal irony was rapidly changing almost into anger. Who the devil is there to ask in this imbecile place? We must find out, for time is passing, he observed suddenly, as though speaking to himself. All at once, there came up a bald-headed elderly man with ingratiating little eyes, wearing a full summer overcoat. Lifting his hat, he introduced himself with a honeyed lisp as Maximov, a landowner of Tula. He at once entered into our visitor's difficulty. Father Zosima lives in the hermitage, apart, 400 paces from the monastery, the other side of the copse. I know it's the other side of the copse, observed Fyodor Pavlovitch, but we don't remember the way. It's a long time since we've been here. This way, by this gate, straight across the copse. The copse. Come with me, won't you? I'll show you. I have to go. I'm going myself. This way, this way. They came out of the gate and turned towards the copse. Maximov, a man of 60, ran rather than walked, turning sideways to stare at them all with an incredible degree of nervous curiosity. His eyes looked starting out of his head. You see, we have come to the elder upon business of our own, observed Musov severely. That personage has granted us an audience, so to speak, and so, though we thank you for showing us the way, we cannot ask you to accompany us. I've been there. I've been already. Le Chevalier Parfait. And Maximov snapped his fingers in the air. Who is a chevalier? Asked Musov. The elder, the splendid elder, the elder, the honor and glory of the monastery, Zosima, such an elder. But his incoherent talk was cut short by a very pale, wan-looking monk of medium height, wearing a monk's cap, who overtook them. Fyodor Pavlovitch and Musov stopped. The monk, with an extremely courteous, profound bow, announced, "The Father Superior invites all of you gentlemen to dine with him after your visit to the hermitage, at 1 o'clock, not later, and you also," he added, addressing Maximov. "That I certainly will, without fail," cried Fyodor Pavlovitch, hugely delighted at the invitation. "And believe me, we've all given our word to behave properly here. And you, Pyotr Alexandrovich, will you go too?" "Yes, of course. What have I come for but to study all the customs here? The only obstacle to me is your company." "Yes, Dmitri Fyodorovitch is non-existent as yet. It would be a capital thing if he didn't turn up. Do you suppose I like all this business and in your company too? So we will come to dinner. Thank the Father Superior," he said to the monk. "No, it is my duty now to conduct you to the elder," answered the monk. "If so, I'll go straight to the Father Superior, to the Father Superior," babbled Maximov. "The Father Superior is engaged just now, but as you please," the monk hesitated. "Impertinent old man," Musov observed aloud while Maximov ran back to the monastery. "He's like Fanson," Fyodor Pavlovitch said suddenly. "Is that all you can think of? In what way is he like Fanson? Have you ever seen Fanson?" "I've seen his portrait. It's not the features, but something indefinable. He's a second Fanson. I can always tell from the physiognomy. I dare say you are a connoisseur in that. But look here, Fyodor Pavlovitch, you said just now that we had given our word to behave properly. Remember it. I advise you to control yourself. But if you begin to play the fool, I don't intend to be associated with you here. You see what a man he is." He turned to the monk. "I'm afraid to go among decent people with him." A fine smile, not without a certain slyness, came onto the pale, plucked lips of the monk, but he made no reply, and was evidently silent from a sense of his own dignity. Yusuf frowned more than ever. Devil take them all. An outer show, elaborated through centuries, and nothing but charlatanism and nonsense underneath, flashed through Yusuf's mind. "Here's the hermitage. We've arrived," cried Fyodor Pavlovitch. "The gates are shut," and he repeatedly made the sign of the cross to the saints painted above and on the sides of the gates. "When you go to Rome, you must do as the Romans do. Here in this hermitage there are 25 saints being saved. They look at one another and eat cabbages, and not one woman goes in at this gate. That's what is remarkable, and that really is so. But I did hear that the elder receives ladies," he remarked suddenly to the monk. Women of the people are here too now, lying in the portico there waiting. But for ladies of higher rank, 2 rooms have been built adjoining the portico, but outside the precincts. You can see the windows, and the elder goes out to them by an inner passage when he is well enough. They are always outside the precincts. There is a Harkov lady, Madame Polakov, waiting there now with her sick daughter. Probably he has promised to come out to her, though of late he has been so weak that he has hardly shown himself even to the people. So then there are loopholes, after all, to creep out of the hermitage to the ladies. Don't suppose from the thought that I mean any harm, but do you know that at Athos, not only the visits of women are not allowed, but no creature of the female sex, no hens, nor turkey hens, nor cows. Fyodor Pavlovitch, I warn you, I shall go back and leave you here. They'll turn you out when I'm gone. But I'm not interfering with you, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. Look, he cried suddenly, stepping within the precincts. What a vale of roses they live in! Though there were no roses now, there were numbers of rare and beautiful autumn flowers growing wherever there was space for them, and evidently tended by a skillful hand. There were flower beds round the church and between the tombs, and the one-storied wooden house where the elder lived was also surrounded with flowers. And was it like this in the time of the last elder, Varsonofy? He didn't care for such visits. They say he used to jump up and thrash even ladies with a stick, observed Fyodor Pavlovitch as he went up the steps. The elder Varsonofy did sometimes seem rather strange, but a great deal of it's told is foolishness. He never thrashed anyone, answered the monk. Now, gentlemen, if you will wait a minute, I will announce you. Fyodor Pavlovitch, for the last time, your compact, do you hear? Behave properly, or I will pay you out. Yusuf had time to mutter again. I can't think why you are so agitated, Fyodor Pavlovitch observed sarcastically. Are you uneasy about your sins? They say he can tell by one's eyes what one has come about. And what a lot you think of their opinion. You, a Parisian, and so advanced. I'm surprised at you. But Musov had no time to reply to this sarcasm. They were asked to come in. He walked in, somewhat irritated. Now, I know myself. I am annoyed. I shall lose my temper and begin to quarrel, and lower myself and my ideas, he reflected. End of section 6.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 2, Chapter 2, The Old Buffoon. They entered the room almost at the same moment that the elder came in from his bedroom. There were already in the salle, awaiting the elder, 2 monks of the hermitage, one the Father Librarian, and the other Father Paisi, a very learned man, so they said, in delicate health, though not old. There was also a tall young man who looked about 22, standing in the corner throughout the interview. He had a broad, fresh face and clever, observant, narrow brown eyes, and was wearing ordinary dress. He was a divinity student living under the protection of the monastery. His expression was one of unquestioning but self-respecting reverence. Being in a subordinate and dependent position, and so not on an equality with the guests, he did not greet them with a bow. Father Zosima was accompanied by a novice and by Alyosha. The 2 monks rose and greeted him with a very deep bow, touching the ground with their fingers, then kissed his hand. Blessing them, the elder replied with as deep a reverence to them and asked their blessing. The whole ceremony was performed very seriously, with an appearance of feeling, not like an everyday rite. But Musov fancied that it was all done with intentional impressiveness. He stood in front of the other visitors. He ought, he had reflected upon it the evening before, from simple politeness, since it was the custom here, to have gone up to receive the elder's blessing, even if he did not kiss his hand. But when he saw all this bowing and kissing on the part of the monks, he instantly changed his mind. With dignified gravity, he made a rather deep, conventional bow and moved away to a chair. Fyodor Pavlovitch did the same, mimicking Yusuf like an ape. Ivan bowed with great dignity and courtesy, but he too kept his hands at his sides, while Kalganov was so confused that he did not bow at all. The elder let fall the hand raised to bless them, and bowing to them again, asked them all to sit down. The blood rushed to Alyosha's cheeks. He was ashamed. His forebodings were coming true. Father Zosima sat down on a very old-fashioned mahogany sofa covered with leather and made his visitors sit down in a row along the opposite wall on 4 mahogany chairs covered with shabby black leather. The monks sat, one at the door and the other at the window. The divinity student, the novice, and Alyosha remained standing. The cell was not very large and had a faded look. It contained nothing but the most necessary furniture, of coarse and poor quality. There were 2 pots of flowers in the window and a number of holy pictures in the corner. Before one huge ancient icon of the Virgin, a lamp was burning. Near it were 2 other holy pictures in shining settings, and next to them, carved cherubims, china eggs, a Catholic cross of ivory, with the Mater Dolorosa embracing it, and several foreign engravings from the great Italian artists of past centuries. Next to these costly and artistic engravings were several of the roughest Russian prints of saints and martyrs, such as are sold for a few farthings at all the fairs. On the other walls were portraits of Russian bishops, past and present. Yusuf took a cursory glance at all these conventional surroundings and bent an intent look upon the elder. He had a high opinion of his own insight, a weakness excusable in him as he was 50, an age at which a clever man of the world of established position can hardly help taking himself rather seriously. At the first moment, he did not like Zosima. There was, indeed, something in the elder's face which many people besides Musov might not have liked. He was a short, bent little man with very weak legs, and though he was only 65, he looked at least 10 years older. His face was very thin and covered with a network of fine wrinkles, particularly numerous about his eyes, which were small, light-colored, quick, and shining like bright points. He had a sprinkling of gray hair about his temples. His pointed beard was small and scanty, and his lips, which smiled frequently, were as thin as 2 threads. His nose was not long, but sharp, like a bird's beak. To all appearances, a malicious soul, full of petty pride, thought Musov. He felt altogether dissatisfied with his position. A cheap little clock on the wall struck 12 hurriedly and served to begin the conversation. Precisely to our time, cried Fyodor Pavlovitch, but no sign of my son, Dmitri. I apologize for him, sacred elder. Alyosha shuddered all over. Sacred elder. I am always punctual myself, minute for minute, remembering that punctuality is the courtesy of kings. But you are not a king anyway, Yusuf muttered, losing his self-restraint at once. Yes, that's true. I'm not a king, and would you believe it, Pyotr Alexandrovitch, I was aware of that myself. But there, I always say the wrong thing. Your Reverence, he cried with sudden pathos, you behold before you a buffoon in earnest. I introduce myself as such. It's an old habit, alas, and if I sometimes talk nonsense out of place, it's with an object, the object of amusing people and making myself agreeable. One must be agreeable, mustn't one? I was 7 years ago in a little town where I had business, and I made friends with some merchants there. We went to the captain of police because we had to see him about something, and to ask him to dine with us. He was a tall, fat, fair, sulky man, the most dangerous type in such cases. It's their liver. I went straight up to him. and with the ease of a man of the world, you know. Mr. Ispravnik, said I, be our napravnik. What do you mean by napravnik? Said he. I saw at the first half second that it had missed 1 year. He stood there so glum. I wanted to make a joke, said I, to the general diversion, as Mr. Napravnik is our well-known Russian orchestra conductor, and what we need for the harmony of our undertaking is someone of that sort. I explained my comparison very reasonably, didn't I? Excuse me, said he. I am an Ispravnik, and I do not allow puns to be made on my calling. He turned and walked away. I followed him, shouting, Yes, yes, you are an Ispravnik, not a Napravnik. No, he said, since you called me a Napravnik, I am one. And would you believe it? It ruined our business. And I'm always like that, always like that. Always injuring myself with my politeness. Once, many years ago, I said to an influential person, Your wife is a ticklish lady, in an honorable sense, of the moral qualities, so to speak. But he asked me, Why? Have you tickled her? I thought I'd be polite, so I couldn't help saying, Yes. He gave me a fine tickling on the spot. Only that happened long ago, so I'm not ashamed to tell the story. I'm always injuring myself like that. You're doing it now, muttered Yusuf with disgust. Father Zosima scrutinized them both in silence. Am I? Would you believe it? I was aware of that, too, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. And let me tell you, indeed, I foresaw I should as soon as I began to speak. And do you know, I foresaw, too, that you'd be the first to remark on it. The minute I see my joke isn't coming off, Your Reverence, both my cheeks feel as though they were drawn down to the lower jaw, and there is almost a spasm in them. That's been so since I was young, when I had to make jokes for my living in noblemen's families. I am an inveterate buffoon, and have been from birth up, Your Reverence. It's as though it were a craze in me. I dare say it's a devil within me, but only a little one. A more serious one would have chosen another lodging. But not your soul, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. You're not a lodging worth having either. But I do believe, I believe in God, though I have had doubts of late. But now I sit and await words of wisdom. I'm like the philosopher Diderot, Your Reverence. Did you ever hear, Most Holy Father, how Diderot went to see the Metropolitan Platon in the time of the Empress Catherine? He went in and said straight out, There is no God. To which the great bishop lifted up his finger and answered, The fool hath said in his heart, There is no God. And he fell down at his feet on the spot. I believe, he cried, and will be christened. And so he was. Princess Statkov was his godmother, and Potyomkin his godfather. Fyodor Pavlovitch, this is unbearable. You know you're telling lies, and that that stupid anecdote isn't true. Why are you playing the fool? Cried Yusuf in a shaking voice. I suspected all my life that it wasn't true, Fyodor Pavlovitch cried with conviction. But I'll tell you the whole truth, gentlemen. Great elder, forgive me. The last thing about Diderot's christening I made up just now. I never thought of it before. I made it up to add piquancy. I play the fool, Pyotr Alexandrovitch, to make myself agreeable. Though I really don't know myself sometimes what I do it for. And as for Diderot, I heard as far as the fool hath said in his heart 20 times from the gentry about here when I was young. I heard your aunt, Pyotr Alexandrovitch, tell the story. They all believe to this day that the infidel Diderot came to dispute about God with the Metropolitan Platon. Yusuf got up, forgetting himself in his impatience. He was furious and conscious of being ridiculous. What was taking place in the cell was really incredible. For 40 or 50 years past, from the times of former elders, no visitors had entered that cell without feelings of the profoundest veneration. Almost everyone admitted to the cell felt that a great favor was being shown him. Many remained kneeling during the whole visit. Of those visitors, many had been men of high rank and learning, some even free thinkers, attracted by curiosity, but all, without exception, had shown the profoundest reverence and delicacy. For here there was no question of money, but only, on the one side, love and kindness, and on the other, penitence and eager desire to decide some spiritual problem or crisis. So that such buffoonery amazed and bewildered the spectators, or at least some of them. The monks, with unchanged countenances, waited with earnest attention to hear what the elder would say, but seemed on the point of standing up like Musa. Alyosha stood with hanging head on the verge of tears. What seemed to him strangest of all was that his brother Ivan, on whom alone he had rested his hopes, and who alone had such influence on his father that he could have stopped him, sat now quite unmoved, with downcast eyes, apparently waiting with interest to see how it would end, as though he had nothing to do with it. Alyosha did not dare to look at Rakitin, the divinity student, whom he knew almost intimately. He alone in the monastery knew Rakitin's thoughts. "Forgive me," began Yusuf, addressing Father Zassim, "for perhaps I seem to be taking part in this shameful foolery. I made a mistake in believing that even a man like Fyodor Pavlovitch would understand what was due on a visit to so honored a personage. I did not suppose I should have to apologize simply for having come with him." Pyotr Alexandrovitch could say no more, and was about to leave the room, overwhelmed with confusion. "Don't distress yourself, I beg." The elder got on to his feeble legs, and taking Pyotr Alexandrovitch by both hands, made him sit down again. "I beg you not to disturb yourself. I particularly beg you to be my guest." And with a bow, he went back and sat down again on his little sofa. "Great elder, speak. Do I annoy you by my vivacity?" Fyodor Pavlovitch cried suddenly, clutching the arms of his chair in both hands, as though ready to leap up from it if the answer were unfavorable. "I earnestly beg you, too, not to disturb yourself, and not to be uneasy," the elder said impressively. "Do not trouble. Make yourself quite at home, and above all, do not be so ashamed of yourself, for that is at the root of it all." "Quite at home, to be my natural self. Oh, that is too much, but I accept it with grateful joy. Do you know, blessed Father, you'd better not invite me to be my natural self. Don't risk it. I will not go so far as that myself. I warn you, for your own sake. Well, the rest is still plunged in the mists of uncertainty, though there are people who'd be pleased to describe me for you. I mean that for you, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. But as for you, holy being, let me tell you I am brimming over with ecstasy." He got up, and throwing up his hands, declaimed, "Blessed be the womb that bare thee, and the paps that gave thee suck, the paps especially. When you said just now, don't be so ashamed of yourself, for that is at the root of it all, you pierced right through me by that remark, and read me to the core. Indeed, I always feel when I meet people that I am lower than all, and that they all take me for a buffoon. So I say, let me really play the buffoon. I am not afraid of your opinion, for you are every one of you worse than I am. That is why I am a buffoon. It is, from shame, great elder, from shame. It's simply oversensitiveness that makes me rowdy. If I had only been sure that everyone would accept me as the kindest and wisest of men. Oh, Lord, what a good man I should have been then. Teacher, he fell suddenly on his knees. What must I do to gain eternal life? It was difficult even now to decide whether he was joking or really. Father Zosima, lifting his eyes, looked at him and said with a smile, You have known for a long time what you must do. You have sense enough. Don't give way to drunkenness and incontinence of speech. Don't give way to sensual lust, and above all to the love of money. And close your taverns. If you can't close all, at least 2 or 3. And above all, don't lie. You mean about Diderot? No, not about Diderot. Above all, don't lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to such a pass that he cannot distinguish the truth within him or around him, and so loses all respect for himself and for others. And having no respect, he ceases to love, and in order to occupy and distract himself without love, he gives way to passions and coarse pleasures, and sinks to bestiality in his vices, all from continual lying to other men and to himself. The man who lies to himself can be more easily offended than anyone. You know, it is sometimes very pleasant to take offense, isn't it? A man may know that nobody has insulted him, but that he has invented the insult for himself, has lied and exaggerated to make it picturesque, has caught at a word and made a mountain out of a molehill. He knows that himself, yet he will be the first to take offense, and will revel in his resentment till he feels great pleasure in it, and so pass to genuine vindictiveness. But get up, sit down, I beg you. All this, too, is deceitful posturing. Blessed man, give me your hand to kiss. Fyodor Pavlovitch skipped up and imprinted a rapid kiss on the elder's thin hand. It is pleasant to take offense. You said that so well, as I never heard it before. Yes, I have been all my life taking offense to please myself, taking offense on aesthetic grounds, for it is not so much pleasant as distinguished sometimes to be insulted. That you had forgotten, great elder. It is distinguished. I shall make a note of that. But I have been lying positively my whole life long, every day and hour of it. Of a truth, I am a lie, and the father of lies. Though I believe I am not the father of lies, I'm getting mixed in my texts. Say the son of lies, and that will be enough. Only, my angel, I may sometimes talk about Diderot. Diderot will do no harm, though sometimes a word will do harm. Great elder, by the way, I was forgetting, though I had been meaning for the last 2 years to come here on purpose to ask and to find out something. Only do tell Pyotr Alexandrovitch not to interrupt me. Here is my question. Is it true, great father, that the story is told somewhere in the lives of the saints of a holy saint martyred for his faith who, when his head was cut off at last, stood up, picked up his head, and courteously kissing it, walked a long way, carrying it in his hands? Is that true or not, honored father? No, it is untrue, said the elder. There is nothing of the kind in all the lives of the saints. What saint do you say the story is told of? Asked the father librarian. I do not know what saint. I do not know and can't tell. I was deceived. I was told the story. I had heard it. And do you know who told it? Pyotr Alexandrovitch Musov here, who was so angry just now about Diderot. He it was who told the story. I have never told it you. I never speak to you at all. It is true you did not tell me, but you told it when I was present. It was 3 years ago. I mentioned it because by that ridiculous story you shook my faith, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. You knew nothing of it, but I went home with my faith shaken, and I have been getting more and more shaken ever since. Yes, Pyotr Alexandrovitch, you were the cause of a great fall. That was not a Diderot. Fyodor Pavlovitch got excited and pathetic, though it was perfectly clear to everyone by now that he was playing a part again. Yet Musov was stung by his words. "What nonsense, and it is all nonsense," he muttered. "I may really have told it some time or other, but not to you. I was told it myself. I heard it in Paris from a Frenchman. He told me it was read at our Mass from the lives of the saints. He was a very learned man who had made a special study of Russian statistics and had lived a long time in Russia. I have not read the lives of the saints myself, and I am not going to read them. All sorts of things are said at dinner. We were dining then." "Yes, you were dining then, and so I lost my faith," said Fyodor Pavlovitch, mimicking him. "What do I care for your faith?" Yusuf was on the point of shouting, but he suddenly checked himself and said with contempt, "You defile everything you touch." The elder suddenly rose from his seat. "Excuse me, gentlemen, for leaving you a few minutes," he said, addressing all his guests. "I have visitors awaiting me who arrived before you. But don't you tell lies all the same," he added, turning to Fyodor Pavlovitch with a good-humored face. He went out of the cell. Alyosha and the novice flew to escort him down the steps. Alyosha was breathless. He was glad to get away, but he was glad, too, that the elder was good-humored and not offended. Father Zosima was going towards the portico to bless the people waiting for him there. But Fyodor Pavlovitch persisted in stopping him at the door of the cell. "Blessed man," he cried with feeling, "allow me to kiss your hand once more. Yes, with you I could still talk, I could still get on. Do you think I always lie and play the fool like this? Believe me, I have been acting like this all the time on purpose to try you. I have been testing you all the time to see whether I could get on with you. Is there room for my humility beside your pride? I am ready to give you a testimonial that one can get on with you. But now I'll be quiet. I will keep quiet all the time. I'll sit in a chair and hold my tongue. Now it is for you to speak, Pyotr Alexandrovich. You are the principal person left now for 10 minutes." End of section 7.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 8 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 2, Chapter 3. Peasant Women Who Have Faith. Near the wooden portico below, built onto the outer wall of the precinct, there was a crowd of about 20 peasant women. They had been told that the elder was at last coming out, and they had gathered together in anticipation. 2 ladies, Madame Holokoff and her daughter, had also come out into the portico to wait for the elder, but in a separate part of it, set aside for women of rank. Madame Holokoff was a wealthy lady, still young and attractive, and always dressed with taste. She was rather pale and had lively black eyes. She was not more than 33 and had been 5 years a widow. Her daughter, a girl of 14, was partially paralyzed. The poor child had not been able to walk for the last 6 months and was wheeled about in a long reclining chair. She had a charming little face, rather thin from illness, but full of gaiety. There was a gleam of mischief in her big dark eyes with their long lashes. Her mother had been intending to take her abroad ever since the spring, but they had been detained all the summer by business connected with their estate. They had been staying a week in our town, where they had come more for purposes of business than devotion, but had visited Father Zosima once already 3 days before. Though they knew that the elders scarcely saw anyone, they had now suddenly turned up again and urgently entreated the happiness of looking once again on the great healer. The mother was sitting on a chair by the side of her daughter's invalid carriage, and 2 paces from her stood an old monk, not one of our monastery, but a visitor from an obscure religious house in the far north. He too sought the elder's blessing. But Father Zosima, on entering the portico, went first straight to the peasants who were crowded at the foot of the 3 steps that led up into the portico. Father Zosima stood on the top step, put on his stole, and began blessing the women who thronged about him. One crazy woman was led up to him. As soon as she caught sight of the elder, she began shrieking and writhing as though in the pains of childbirth. Laying the stole on her forehead, he read a short prayer over her, and she was at once soothed and quieted. I do not know how it may be now, but in my childhood I often happened to see and hear these possessed women in the villages and monasteries. They used to be brought to Mass. They would squeal and bark like dogs so that they were heard all over the church. But when the sacrament was carried in and they were led up to it, at once the possession ceased, and the sick women were always soothed for a time. I was greatly impressed and amazed at this as a child, but then I heard from country neighbors and from my town teachers that the whole illness was simulated to avoid work, and that it could always be cured by suitable severity. Various anecdotes were told to confirm this. But later on, I learned with astonishment from medical specialists that there is no pretense about it, that it is a terrible illness to which women are subject, especially prevalent among us in Russia, and that it is due to the hard lot of the peasant women. It is a disease, I was told, arising from exhausting toil too soon after hard, abnormal, and unassisted labor in childbirth, from the hopeless misery from beatings and so on, which some women were not able to endure like others. The strange and instant healing of the frantic and struggling woman as soon as she was led up to the Holy Sacrament, which had been explained to me as due to malingering and the trickery of the clericals, arose probably in the most natural manner. Both the women who supported her and the invalid herself fully believed as a truth beyond question that the evil spirit in possession of her could not hold out if the sick woman were brought to the sacrament and made to bow down before it. And so, with a nervous and psychically deranged woman, a sort of convulsion of the whole organism always took place and was bound to take place at the moment of bowing down to the sacrament, aroused by the expectation of the miracle of healing and the implicit belief that it would come to pass. And it did come to pass, though only for a moment. It was exactly the same now, as soon as the elder touched the sick woman with the stole. Many of the women in the crowd were moved to tears of ecstasy by the effect of the moment. Some strove to kiss the hem of his garment, others cried out in sing-song voices. He blessed them all and talked with some of them. The possessed woman he knew already. She came from a village only 6 versts from the monastery, and had been brought to him before. But here is one from afar. He pointed to a woman by no means old, but very thin and wasted, with a face not merely sunburnt, but almost blackened by exposure. She was kneeling and gazing with a fixed stare at the elder. There was something almost frenzied in her eyes. From afar off, Father, from afar off, from 200 miles from here, from afar off, Father, from afar off. The woman began in a sing-song voice, as though she were chanting a dirge, swaying her head from side to side, with her cheek resting in her hand. There is silent and long-suffering sorrow to be met with among the peasantry. It withdraws into itself and is still. But there is a grief that breaks out, and from that minute it bursts into tears and finds vent in wailing. This is particularly common with women, but it is no lighter a grief than the silent. Lamentations comfort only by lacerating the heart still more. Such grief does not desire consolation. It feeds on the sense of its hopelessness. Lamentations spring only from the constant craving to reopen the wound. You are of the tradesman class? said Father Zosima, looking curiously at her. Townfolk we are, Father, townfolk, yet we are peasants, though we live in the town. I have come to see you, O Father. We heard of you, Father, we heard of you. I have buried my little son, and I have come on a pilgrimage. I have been in 3 monasteries, but they told me, go, Nastasia, go to them, that is, to you. I have come. I was yesterday at the service, and today I have come to you. What are you weeping for? It's my little son I'm grieving for, Father. He was 3 years old, 3 years, all but 3 months. For my little boy, Father, I'm in anguish for my little boy. He was the last one left. We had 4, my Nikita and I, and now we've no children. Our dear ones have all gone. I buried the first 3 without grieving over much, and now I have buried the last. I can't forget him. He seems always standing before me. He never leaves me. He has withered my heart. I look at his little clothes, his little shirt, his little boots, and I wail. I lay out all that is left of him, all his little things. I look at them and wail. I say to Nikita, my husband, let me go on a pilgrimage, master. He is a driver. We're not poor people, Father, not poor. He drives our own horse. It's all our own, horse and the carriage. And what good is it all to us now? My Nikita has begun drinking while I am away. He's sure to. It used to be so before. As soon as I turn my back, he gives way to it. But now I don't think about him. It's 3 months since I left home. I've forgotten him. I've forgotten everything. I don't want to remember. And what would our life be now together? I've done with him. I've done with them all. I don't care to look upon my house and my goods. I don't care to see anything at all. Listen, mother, said the elder. Once in olden times, a holy saint saw in the temple a mother like you weeping for her little one, her only one, whom God had taken. Knowest thou not, said the saint to her, how bold these little ones are before the throne of God? Verily, there are none bolder than they in the kingdom of heaven. Thou didst give us life, O Lord, they say, and scarcely had we looked upon it when thou didst take it back again. And so boldly they ask and ask again that God gives them at once the rank of angels. Therefore, said the saint, thou too, O mother, rejoice and weep not, for thy little son is with the Lord in the fellowship of the angels. That's what the saint said to the weeping mother of old. He was a great saint, and he could not have spoken falsely. Therefore, you too, mother, know that your little one is surely before the throne of God, is rejoicing and happy, and praying to God for you, and therefore weep not, but rejoice. The woman listened to him, looking down with her cheek in her hand. She sighed deeply. My Nikita tried to comfort me with the same words as you. Foolish one, he said, why weep? Our son is no doubt singing with the angels before God. He says that to me, but he weeps himself. I see that he cries like me. I know, Nikita, said I. Where could he be if not with the Lord God? Only here with us now he is not, as he used to sit beside us before. And if only I could look upon him one little time, if only I could peep at him one little time, without going up to him, without speaking, if I could be hidden in a corner and only see him for one little minute, hear him playing in the yard, calling in his little voice, Mammy, where are you? If only I could hear him pattering with his little feet about the room just once, only once. For so often I remember how he used to run to me and shout and laugh. If only I could hear his little feet, I should know him. But he's gone, Father, he's gone, and I shall never hear him again. Here's his little sash, but him I shall never see or hear now. She drew out of her bosom her boy's little embroidered sash, and as soon as she looked at it, she began shaking with sobs, hiding her eyes with her fingers, through which the tears flowed in a sudden stream. "It is Rachel of old," said the elder, "weeping for her children, and will not be comforted because they are not. Such is the lot set on earth for you mothers. Be not comforted. Consolation is not what you need. Weep and be not consoled, but weep. Only every time that you weep, be sure to remember that your little son is one of the angels of God, that he looks down from there at you and sees you, and rejoices at your tears, and points at them to the Lord God. And a long while yet will you keep that great mother's grief, but it will turn in the end into quiet joy, and your bitter tears will be only tears of tender sorrow that purifies
Whoa.
the heart and delivers it from sin. And I shall pray for the peace of your child's soul. What was his name? Alexei, Father. A sweet name. After Alexei, the man of God? Yes, Father. What a saint he was. I will remember him, Mother, and your grief in my prayers, and I will pray for your husband's health. It is a sin for you to leave him. Your little one will see from heaven that you have forsaken his father, and will weep over you. Why do you trouble his happiness? He is living, for the soul lives forever, and though he is not in the house, he is near you, unseen. How can he go into the house when you say that the house is hateful to you? To whom is he to go if he find you not together, his father and mother? He comes to you in dreams now, and you grieve. But then he will send you gentle dreams. Go to your husband, mother. Go this very day. I will go, Father, at your word. I will go. You've gone straight to my heart. My Nikita, you are waiting for me, the woman began in a sing-song voice. But the elder had already turned away to a very old woman, dressed like a dweller in the town, not like a pilgrim. Her eyes showed that she had come with an object and in order to say something. She said she was the widow of a non-commissioned officer and lived close by in the town. Her son, Vasenka, was in the commissariat service and had gone to Irkutsk in Siberia. He had written twice from there, but now a year had passed since he had written. She did inquire about him, but she did not know the proper place to inquire. Only the other day, Stepanida Ilyinishna, she's a rich merchant's wife, said to me, "You go, Bohorov, and put your son's name down for prayer in the church, and pray for the peace of his soul as though he were dead. His soul will be troubled," she said, "and he will write you a letter." And Stepanida Ilyinishna told me it was a certain thing which had been many times tried. Only I am in doubt. Oh, you light of ours, is it true or false? And would it be right? Don't think of it. It's shameful to ask the question. How is it possible to pray for the peace of a living soul? And his own mother, too. It's a great sin akin to sorcery. Only for your ignorance it is forgiven you. Better pray to the Queen of Heaven, our swift defense and help, for his good health, and that she may forgive you for your error. And another thing I will tell you, Prohorovna. Either he will soon come back to you, your son, or he will be sure to send a letter. Go, and henceforward be in peace. Your son is alive, I tell you. Dear Father, God reward you, our benefactor, who prays for all of us and for our sins. But the elder had already noticed in the crowd two glowing eyes fixed upon him. An exhausted, consumptive-looking, though young peasant woman was gazing at him in silence. Her eyes besought him, but she seemed afraid to approach. What is it, my child? Absolve my soul, Father, she articulated softly, and slowly sank on her knees, bowed down at his feet. I have sinned, Father. I am afraid of my sin. The elder sat down on the lower step. The woman crept closer to him, still on her knees. I am a widow these 3 years, she began in a half-whisper with a sort of shudder. I had a hard life with my husband. He was an old man. He used to beat me cruelly. He lay ill. I thought, looking at him, if he were to get well, if he were to get up again, what then? And then the thought came to me. Stay, said the elder, and he put his ear close to her lips. The woman went on in a low whisper, so that it was almost impossible to catch anything. She had soon done. 3 years ago? Asked the elder. 3 years. At first I didn't think about it, but now I've begun to be ill, and the thought never leaves me. Have you come from far? Over 300 miles away. Have you told it in confession? I have confessed it. Twice I have confessed it. Have you been admitted to communion? Yes, I am afraid. I am afraid to die. Fear nothing, and never be afraid, and don't fret. If only your penitence fail not, God will forgive all. There is no sin, and there can be no sin on all the earth which the Lord will not forgive to the truly repentant. Man cannot commit a sin so great as to exhaust the infinite love of God. Can there be a sin which could exceed the love of God? Think only of repentance, continual repentance, but dismiss fear altogether. Believe that God loves you as you cannot conceive, that he loves you with your sin, in your sin. It has been said of old that over one repentant sinner there is more joy in heaven than over 10 righteous men. Go and fear not. Be not bitter against men. Be not angry if you are wronged. Forgive the dead man in your heart what wrong he did you. Be reconciled with him in truth. If you are penitent, you love. And if you love, you are of God. All things are atoned for. All things are saved by love. If I, a sinner, even as you are, am tender with you and have pity on you, how much more will God? Love is such a priceless treasure that you can redeem the whole world by it and expiate not only your own sins, but the sins of others. He signed her 3 times with the cross, took from his own neck a little icon, and put it upon her. She bowed down to the earth without speaking. He got up and looked cheerfully at a healthy peasant woman with a tiny baby in her arms. From Vishagoria, dear father. 5 miles you have dragged yourself with the baby. What do you want? I've come to look at you. I have been to you before, or have you forgotten? You've no great memory if you've forgotten me. They told us you were ill. Thinks I'll go and see him for myself. Now I see you, and you're not ill. You'll live another 20 years. God bless you. There are plenty to pray for you. How should you be ill? I thank you for all, daughter. By the way, I have a thing to ask, not a great one. Here are 60 kopecks. Give them, dear father, to someone poorer than me. I thought as I came along, better give through him. He'll know whom to give to. Thanks, my dear, thanks. You are a good woman. I love you. I will do so certainly. Is that your little girl? My little girl, father, Lisaveta. May the Lord bless you both, you and your babe, Lisaveta. You have gladdened my heart, mother. Farewell, dear children. Farewell, dear ones. He blessed them all and bowed low to them. End of section 8.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 9 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 2, Chapter 4. A Lady of Little Faith. A visitor looking on the scene of his conversation with the peasants and his blessing them, shed silent tears and wiped them away with her handkerchief. She was a sentimental society lady of genuinely good disposition in many respects. When the elder went up to her at last, she met him enthusiastically. Ah, what I have been feeling looking on at this touching scene. She could not go on for emotion. I understand the people's love for you. I love the people myself. I want to love them. And who could help loving them, our splendid Russian people, so simple in their greatness? How is your daughter's health? You wanted to talk to me again? Oh, I have been urgently begging for it. I have prayed for it. I was ready to fall on my knees and kneel for 3 days at your windows until you let me in. We have come, great healer, to express our ardent gratitude. You have healed my Lise, healed her completely, merely by praying over her last Thursday and laying your hands upon her. We have hastened here to kiss those hands, to pour out our feelings and our homage. What do you mean by healed? But she is still lying down in her chair. But her night fevers have entirely ceased ever since Thursday, said the lady with nervous haste. And that's not all. Her legs are stronger. This morning she got up well. She had slept all night. Look at her rosy cheeks, her bright eyes. She used to be always crying, but now she laughs and is gay and happy. This morning she insisted on my letting her stand up, and she stood up for a whole minute without any support. She wagers that in a fortnight she'll be dancing a quadrille. I've called in Dr. Herzenstube. He shrugged his shoulders and said, I am amazed. I can make nothing of it. And would you have us not come here to disturb you, not fly here to thank you? Please, thank him, thank him. Lisa's pretty little laughing face became suddenly serious. She rose in her chair as far as she could, and, looking at the elder, clasped her hands before him, but could not restrain herself, and broke into laughter. It's at him, she said, pointing to Alyosha, with childish vexation at herself for not being able to repress her mirth. If anyone had looked at Alyosha, standing a step behind the elder, he would have caught a quick flush crimsoning his cheeks in an instant. His eyes shone, and he looked down. She has a message for you, Alexei Fyodorovitch. How are you? The mother went on, holding out her exquisitely gloved hand to Alyosha. The elder turned round and all at once looked attentively at Alyosha. The latter went nearer to Lise and, smiling in a strangely awkward way, held out his hand to her too. Lise assumed an important air. Katerina Ivanovna has sent you this through me. She handed him a little note. She particularly begs you to go and see her as soon as possible, that you will not fail her, but will be sure to come. She asks me to go and see her? Me? What for? Alyosha muttered in great astonishment. His face at once looked anxious. Oh, it's all to do with Dmitri Fyodorovitch and what has happened lately, the mother explained hurriedly. Katerina Ivanovna has made up her mind, but she must see you about it. Why, of course, I can't say, but she wants to see you at once, and you will go to her, of course. It is a Christian duty. I have only seen her once, Alyosha protested with the same perplexity. Oh, she is such a lofty, incomparable creature, if only for her suffering. Think what she has gone through, what she is enduring now. Think what awaits her. It's all terrible, terrible. Very well, I will come, Alyosha decided after rapidly scanning the brief enigmatic note, which consisted of an urgent entreaty that he would come, without any sort of explanation. Oh, how sweet and generous that would be of you, cried Lise with sudden animation. I told Mama you'd be sure not to go. I said you were saving your soul. How splendid you are. I've always thought you were splendid. How glad I am to tell you so. Please, said her mother impressively, though she smiled after she had said it. You have quite forgotten us, Alexei Fyodorovitch, she said. You never come to see us. Yet Lise has told me twice that she is never happy except with you. Alyosha raised his downcast eyes and again flushed and again smiled without knowing why. But the elder was no longer watching him. He had begun talking to a monk who, as mentioned before, had been awaiting his entrance by Lise's chair. He was evidently a monk of the humblest, that is, of the peasant class, of a narrow outlook, but a true believer, and in his own way, a stubborn one. He announced that he had come from the far north, from Obdorsk, from St. Sylvester, and was a member of a poor monastery consisting of only 10 monks. The elder gave him his blessing and invited him to come to his cell whenever he liked. How can you presume to do such deeds? The monk asked suddenly, pointing solemnly and significantly at Lise. He was referring to her healing. It's too early, of course, to speak of that. Relief is not complete cure. It may proceed from different causes. But if there has been any healing, it is by no power but God's will. It's all from God. Visit me, Father, he added to the monk. It's not often I can see visitors. I am ill, and I know that my days are numbered. Oh, no, no, God will not take you from us. You will live a long, long time yet, cried the lady. And in what way are you ill? You look so well, so gay and happy. I am extraordinarily better today, but I know that it's only for a moment. I understand my disease now thoroughly. If I seemed so happy to you, you could never say anything that would please me so much. For men are made for happiness, and anyone who is completely happy has a right to say to himself, I am doing God's will on earth. All the righteous, all the saints, all the holy martyrs were happy. Oh, how you speak! What bold and lofty words, cried the lady. You seem to pierce with your words. And yet, happiness, happiness, where is it? Who can say of himself that he is happy? Since you have been so good as to let us see you once more today, let me tell you what I could not utter last time, what I dared not say. Oh, I am suffering, and have been for so long. I am suffering. Forgive me, I am suffering. And in a rush of fervent feeling, she clasped her hands before him. From what, specially? I suffer from lack of faith. Lack of faith in God. Oh, no, no, I dare not even think of that. But the future life, it is such an enigma, and no one can solve it. Listen, you are a healer. You are deeply versed in the human soul, and of course I dare not expect you to believe me entirely. But I assure you, on my word of honor, that I am not speaking lightly now. The thought of the life beyond the grave distracts me to anguish, to terror, and I don't know to whom to appeal, and have not dared to all my life. And now I am so bold as to ask you, oh God, what will you think of me now? She clasped her hands. Don't distress yourself about my opinion of you, said the elder. I quite believe in the sincerity of your suffering. Oh, how thankful I am to you. You see, I shut my eyes and ask myself, if everyone has faith, where did it come from? And then they do say that it all comes from terror at the menacing phenomena of nature, and that none of it's real. And I say to myself, what if I've been believing all my life, and when I come to die, there's nothing but the burdocks growing on my grave, as I read in some author? It's awful. How can I get back my faith? But I only believed when I was a little child, mechanically, without thinking of anything. How? How is one to prove it? I have come now to lay my soul before you and to ask you about it. If I let this chance slip, no one all my life will answer me. How can I prove it? How can I convince myself? Oh, how unhappy I am. I stand and look about me and see that scarcely anyone else cares. No one troubles his head about it, and I'm the only one who can't stand it. It's deadly, deadly. No doubt. But there's no proving it, though you can be convinced of it. How? By the experience of active love. Strive to love your neighbor actively and indefatigably. And as far as you advance in love, you will grow surer of the reality of God and of the immortality of your soul. If you attain to perfect self-forgetfulness in the love of your neighbor, then you will believe without doubt, and no doubt can possibly enter your soul. This has been tried. This is certain. In active love, there's another question, and such a question. You see, I so love humanity that, would you believe it, I often dream of forsaking all that I have, leaving Lise and becoming a sister of mercy. I close my eyes and think and dream, and at that moment I feel full of strength to overcome all obstacles. No wounds, no festering sores could at that moment frighten me. I would bind them up and wash them with my own hands. I would nurse the afflicted. I would be ready to kiss such wounds. It is much and well that your mind is full of such dreams and not others. Sometime, unawares, you may do a good deed in reality. Yes, but could I endure such a life for long? The lady went on fervently, almost frantically. That's the chief question. That's my most agonizing question. I shut my eyes and ask myself, would you persevere long on that path? And if the patient whose wounds you are washing did not meet you with gratitude, but worried you with his whims, without valuing or remarking your charitable services, began abusing you and rudely commanding you, and complaining to the superior authorities of you, which often happens when people are in great suffering, what then? Would you persevere in your love or not? And do you know, I came with horror to the conclusion that if anything could dissipate my love to humanity, it would be ingratitude. In short, I am a hired servant. I expect my payment at once. That is praise and the repayment of love with love. Otherwise, I am incapable of loving anyone. She was in a very paroxysm of self-castigation, and, concluding, she looked with defiant resolution at the elder. It's just the same story as a doctor once told me, observed the elder. He was a man getting on in years, and undoubtedly clever. He spoke as frankly as you, though in jest, in bitter jest. I love humanity, he said, but I wonder at myself. The more I love humanity in general, the less I love man in particular. In my dreams, he said, I have often come to making enthusiastic schemes for the service of humanity, and perhaps I might actually have faced crucifixion if it had been suddenly necessary. And yet, I am incapable of living in the same room with anyone for 2 days together, as I know by experience. As soon as anyone is near me, his personality disturbs my self-complacency and restricts my freedom. In 24 hours, I begin to hate the best of men. One because he's too long over his dinner, another because he has a cold and keeps on blowing his nose. I become hostile to people the moment they come close to me. But it has always happened that the more I detest men individually, the more ardent becomes my love for humanity. But what's to be done? What can one do in such a case? Must one despair? No, it is enough that you are distressed at it. Do what you can, and it will be reckoned unto you. Much is done already in you, since you can so deeply and sincerely know yourself. If you had been talking to me so sincerely, simply to gain approbation for your frankness, as you did for me just now, then of course you will not attain to anything in the achievement of real love. It will all get no further than dreams, and your whole life will slip away like a phantom. In that case, you will naturally cease to think of the future life, too, and will of yourself grow calmer after a fashion in the end. You have crushed me. Only now, as you speak, I understand that I was really only seeking your approbation for my sincerity when I told you I could not endure ingratitude. You have revealed me to myself. You have seen through me and explained me to myself. Are you speaking the truth? Well, now, after such a confession, I believe that you are sincere and good at heart. If you do not attain happiness, always remember that you are on the right road and try not to leave it. Above all, avoid falsehood, every kind of falsehood, especially falseness to yourself. Watch over your own deceitfulness and look into it every hour, every minute. Avoid being scornful both to others and to yourself. What seems to you bad within you will grow purer from the very fact of your observing it in yourself. Avoid fear, too, though fear is only the consequence of every sort of falsehood. Never be frightened at your own faint-heartedness in attaining love. Don't be frightened overmuch even at your evil actions. I am sorry I can say nothing more consoling to you, for love in action is a harsh and dreadful thing compared with love in dreams. Love in dreams is greedy for immediate action, rapidly performed and in the sight of all. Men will even give their lives if only the ordeal does not last long, but is soon over, with all looking on and applauding as though on the stage. But active love is labor and fortitude, and for some people too, perhaps a complete science. But I predict that just when you see with horror that in spite of all your efforts you are getting farther from your goal instead of nearer to it, at that very moment I predict that you will reach it and behold clearly the miraculous power of the Lord who has been all the time loving and mysteriously guiding you. Forgive me for not being able to stay longer with you. They are waiting for me. Goodbye. The lady was weeping. Please, please, bless her, she cried, starting up suddenly. She does not deserve to be loved. I have seen her naughtiness all along, the elder said jestingly. Why have you been laughing at Alexei? Lise had, in fact, been occupied in mocking at him all the time. She had noticed before that Alyosha was shy and tried not to look at her, and she found this extremely amusing. She waited intently to catch his eye. Alyosha, unable to endure her persistent stare, was irresistibly and suddenly drawn to glance at her, and at once she smiled triumphantly in his face. Alyosha was even more disconcerted and vexed. At last he turned away from her altogether and hid behind the elder's back. After a few minutes, drawn by the same irresistible force, he turned again to see whether he was being looked at or not, and found Lise almost hanging out of her chair to peep sideways at him, eagerly waiting for him to look. Catching his eye, she laughed so that the elder could not help saying, "Why do you make fun of him like that, naughty girl?" Lise suddenly and quite unexpectedly blushed. Her eyes flashed, and her face became quite serious. She began speaking quickly and nervously, in a warm and resentful voice. Why has he forgotten everything then? He used to carry me about when I was little. We used to play together. He used to come to teach me to read, do you know? 2 years ago, when he went away, he said that he would never forget me, that we were friends forever, forever, forever. And now he's afraid of me all at once. Am I going to eat him? Why doesn't he want to come near me? Why doesn't he talk? Why won't he come and see us? It's not that you won't let him. We know that he goes everywhere. It's not good manners for me to invite him. He ought to have thought of it first, if he hasn't forgotten me. No, now he's saving his soul. Why have you put that long gown on him? If he runs, he'll fall. And suddenly she hid her face in her hand and went off into irresistible, prolonged, nervous, inaudible laughter. The elder listened to her with a smile and blessed her tenderly. As she kissed his hand, she suddenly pressed it to her eyes and began crying. Don't be angry with me. I'm silly and good for nothing. And perhaps Alyosha is right, quite right, in not wanting to come and see such a ridiculous girl. I will certainly send him, said the elder. End of section 9.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 10 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Pearley. Book 2, Chapter 5. So be it. So be it. The elder's absence from his cell had lasted for but 25 minutes. It was more than 12:30, but Dmitri, on whose account they had all met there, had still not appeared. But he seemed almost to be forgotten. When the elder entered the cell again, he found his guests engaged in eager conversation. Ivan and the two monks took the leading share in it. Musov, too, was trying to take part, and apparently very eagerly in the conversation. But he was unsuccessful at this also. He was evidently in the background, and his remarks were treated with neglect, which increased his irritability. He had had intellectual encounters with Ivan before, and he could not endure a certain carelessness Ivan showed him. Hitherto, at least, I have stood in the front ranks of all that is progressive in Europe, and here the new generation positively ignores us, he thought. Fyodor Pavlovitch, who had given his word to sit still and be quiet, had actually been quiet for some time, but he watched his neighbor Musov with an ironical little smile, obviously enjoying his discomfiture. He had been waiting for some time to pay off his scores, and now he could not let the opportunity slip. Bending over his shoulder, he began teasing him again in a whisper. Why didn't you go away just now, after the courteous kissing? Why did you consent to remain in such unseemly company? It was because you felt insulted and grieved, and you remained to vindicate yourself by showing off your intelligence. Now you won't go until you've displayed your intellect to the heavens. You again. On the contrary, I'm just going. You'll be the last of all to go. Fyodor Pavlovitch delivered him another thrust, almost at the moment of Father Zosima's return. The discussion died down for a moment, but the elder, seating himself in his former place, looked at them all as though cordially inviting them to go on. Alyosha, who knew every expression of his face, saw that he was fearfully exhausted and making a great effort. Of late he had been liable to fainting fits from exhaustion. His face had the pallor that was common before such attacks, and his lips were white. But he evidently did not want to break up the party. He seemed to have some special object of his own in keeping them. What object? Alyosha watched him intently. We are discussing this gentleman's most interesting article, said Father Yosef, the librarian, addressing the elder and indicating Ivan. He brings forward much that is new, but I think the argument cuts both ways. It is an article written in answer to a book by an ecclesiastical authority on the question of the ecclesiastical court and the scope of its jurisdiction. I'm sorry I have not read your article, but I've heard of him, said the elder, looking keenly and intently at Ivan. He takes up a most interesting position, continued the father librarian. As far as church jurisdiction is concerned, he is apparently quite opposed to the separation of church from state. That's interesting, but in what sense? Father Zosima asked Ivan. The latter at last answered him, not condescendingly, slightest arrière-pensée. I start from the position this confusion of elements, that is, of the essential principles of church and state, will of course go on forever, in spite of the fact that it is impossible for them to mingle, and that the confusion of these elements cannot lead to any consistent or even normal results, for there is sitting at the very foundation of it, compromise between the church and state in such questions as, for instance, jurisdiction, is, to my thinking, impossible in any real sense. But clerical opponent maintains that the church holds a precise and defined position in the state. I maintain, on the contrary, that the church ought to include the whole state, and not simply to occupy a corner in it. And if this is, for some reason, impossible at present, then it ought in reality to be set up as the direct and chief aim of the future development of Christian society. Perfectly true, Father Seat, silent and learned monk, assented with firmness and decision. The purest ultramontanism, cried Yusuf impatiently, crossing and recrossing his legs. Well, we have no mountains, cried Father Yusuf, and turning to the elder, he continued. The answer he makes to the following fundamental and essential propositions of his opponent, who is, you must note, an ecclesiastic. First, that no social organization can or ought to arrogate to itself the power to dispose of the civic and political rights of its members. Secondly, that criminal and civil jurisdiction ought not to belong to the church, and is inconsistent with its nature, both as a divine institution and as an organization of men for religious objects. And finally, in the third place, the church is a kingdom not of this world. A most unworthy play upon words for an ecclesiastic, Father Icy could not refrain from breaking in again. I have read the book which you have answered, he added, addressing me, and was astounded at the words, the church is a kingdom not of this world. If it is not of this world, then it cannot exist on earth at all. In the gospel, the words not of this world are not used in that sense. To play with such words is indefensible. Our Lord Jesus Christ came to set up the church upon earth. The kingdom of heaven, of course, is not of this world, not in heaven, but it is only entered through the church, which has been founded and established upon earth. And so a frivolous play upon words in such a connection is unpardonable and improper. The church is, in truth, a kingdom, and ordained to rule, and in the end must undoubtedly become the kingdom ruling over all the earth. For that we have the divine promise. He ceased speaking suddenly, as though checking himself. After listening attentively and respectfully, Ivan went on, addressing the elder with perfect composure, and as before, with ready cordiality. The whole point of my article lies in the fact that during the first 3 centuries, Christianity only existed on earth in the church, was nothing but the church. When the pagan decided to become Christian, it inevitably happened that, by becoming Christian, it included the church, but remained a pagan state in very many of its departments. In reality, this was bound to happen. But Rome as a state retained too much of the pagan civilization and culture, as, for example, the very objects and fundamental principles of the state. The Christian church, entering into the state, could, of course, surrender no part of its fundamental principles, the rock on which it stands, and could pursue no other aims than those which have been ordained and revealed by God himself, and among them that of drawing the whole world, and therefore the ancient pagan state itself, into the church. In that way, that is, with a view to the future, it is not the church that should seek a definite position within the state, like every social organization, as an organization of men for religious purposes, as my opponent calls the church. But on the contrary, earthly state should be, in the end, completely transformed into the church, and should become nothing else but a church, rejecting every purpose incongruous with the aims of the church. And this will not degrade it in any way, or take from its honor and glory as a great state, nor from the glory of its rulers, but only turns it from a false, still pagan, and mistaken path to the true and rightful path, which alone leads to the eternal good. This is why the author of the book on the foundations of church jurisdiction would have judged correctly if, in seeking and laying down those foundations, he had looked upon them as a temporary compromise, inevitable in our sinful and imperfect days. But as soon as the author ventures to declare that the foundations which he predicates now, part of which Father Joseph just enumerated, are the permanent, essential, and eternal foundations, he is going directly against the church and its sacred and eternal vocation. That is the gist of my article. That is, in brief, Father Taisi began again, laying stress on each one. According to certain theories, only too clearly formulated in the 19th century, the church ought to be transformed into the state, as though this would be an advance from a lower to a higher form, so as to disappear into it, making way for science, for the spirit of the age, and civilization. And if the church resists and is unwilling, some corner would be set apart for her in the state, and even that under control. And this will be so everywhere in all modern European countries. But Russian hopes and conceptions demand not that the church should pass as from a lower into a higher type into the state, but, on the contrary, that the state should end by being worthy to become only the church and nothing else. So be it. So be it. Well, I confess you reassured me somewhat, Yusuf said, smiling again, crossing his legs. So far as I understand it, the realization of such an ideal is infinitely remote, and the second coming of Christ. That's as you please. It's a beautiful utopian dream of the abolition of war, diplomacy, banks, and so on. Something after the fashion of socialism, indeed. But I imagine that it was all meant seriously, and that the church might be now going to try criminals and sentence them to beating, prison, even death. But if they were none but the ecclesiastical court, the church would not even now sentence a criminal to prison or to death. Crime, the way of regarding it, would inevitably change. Not all at once, of course, but fairly soon. Yvonne replied calmly, without flinching. Are you serious? Yusuf glanced keenly at her. If everything became the church would exclude all the criminal and disobedient, and would not cut off their heads, Yvonne went on. I ask you, what would become of the excluded? He would be cut off then, not only from men, as now, but from Christ. By his crime, he would have transgressed not only against men, but against the church of Christ. This is so even now, of course, strictly speaking, but it is not clearly enunciated, and very, very often the criminal of today compromises with his conscience. I steal, he says, but I don't go against the church. I'm not an enemy of Christ. That's what the criminal of today is continually saying to himself. But when the church takes the place of the state, it will be difficult for him, in opposition to the church all over the world, to say, all men are mistaken, all in error, all mankind are the false church. I, a thief and murderer, am the only true Christian church. It will be very difficult to say this to himself. It requires a rare combination of unusual circumstances. Now, on the other side, take the church's own view of crime. Is it not bound to renounce the present almost pagan attitude, and to change from a mechanical cutting off of its tainted member for the preservation into completely and honestly adopting the idea of the regeneration of the man, of his reformation and salvation. What do you mean? I fail to understand the game. You saw that. Some sort of dream again, something shapeless, even incomprehensible. What is excommunication? What sort of exclusion? I suspect you are simply amusing yourself before funerals. Yes, but you know, in reality, it is so now, said the elder suddenly. It all turned to him at once. If it were not for the Church of Christ, there would be nothing to restrain the criminal from evildoing. No real chastisement for it afterwards. None, that is, but the mechanical punishments for unjust men, which in the majority of cases only embitters the heart, and not the real punishment, the only effectual, the only deterrent against somebody, which lies in the recognition of sin by conscience. How is that? Anyone inquired, asked Musaf with lively curiosity. Why, began the elder, all these sentences to exile with hard labor and formerly with flogging also, reform, what's more, deter hardly a single criminal. The number of crimes does not diminish, it is continually on the increase. You must admit that. Consequently, the security of society is not preserved, for although the obnoxious papers are mechanically cut off and sent far away out of sight, another criminal always comes to take his place at once, and often two of them. If anything does preserve society, even in our time, and does regenerate and transform the criminal, it is only the law of Christ speaking in his conscience. It is only by recognizing his wrongdoing as a son of a Christian society, that is, of the Church, that he recognizes his sin against society, that is, against the Church, so that it is only against the Church and not against the state that the criminal of today can recognize that he has sinned. If society, as a church, had jurisdiction, then it would know when to bring back from exclusion and to reunite to itself. Now, the church having no real jurisdiction, but only power of moral condemnation, withdraws over the court before which the criminal act away. She does not excommunicate him, but simply uses motherly exhortation of him. What is more, the church even tries to preserve all Christian communion with the criminal. She admits him to church services, to the Holy Sacrament, gives him alms, and treats him more as a captive than as a convict. And what would become of the criminal, O Lord, if even Christian society, that is, the church, were to reject him, even as the civil law rejects him and cuts him off? What would become of him if the church punished him with her excommunication as the direct consequence of the secular law? There could be more terror, despair, at least for a Russian criminal, for Russian criminals still have faith. Who knows, perhaps then a fearful thing would happen. Perhaps the despairing heart of the criminal would lose its faith. Then what would become of him? But the church, like a tender, loving mother, holds aloof from active punishment herself, as the sinner is too severely punished already by the civil law, and there must be at least someone to have pity on him. The church holds aloof above all, because its judgment is the only one that contains the truth, and therefore cannot practically and morally be united to any other judgment, even as a temporary compromise. She can enter into no compact but that. The foreman criminal, they say, rarely repents, for the very doctrines of today confirm him in the idea that his crime is not a crime, but only a reaction against an unjustly oppressive court. Society cuts him off completely by force. It triumphs over him mechanically, and, so at least they say of themselves in Europe, this exclusion with hatred, forgetfulness, and the most profound indifference as to the ultimate fate of the erring brother. In this way, it all takes place without the compassionate intervention of the church, for in many cases there are no churches there at all, for though ecclesiastics and splendid church buildings remain, the churches themselves have striven to pass from church into state and to disappear completely. So it seems at least in Lutheran countries. As for Rome, it was proclaimed a state instead of a church 1,000 years ago. And so the criminal is no longer conscious of being a member of the church and sinks into despair. If he returns to society, often it is with such hatred that society itself instinctively cuts him off. You can judge for yourself how it must end. In many cases, it would seem to be the same with us, but the difference is that besides the established law courts, we have the church too, which always keeps up relations with the criminal as a dear and still precious son. And besides that, there is still preserved, though only in thought, the judgment of the church, which, though no longer existing in practice, is still living as a dream for the future, and is no doubt instinctively recognized by the criminal in his soul. What was said here just now is true too. That is, that if the jurisdiction of the church were introduced in practice in its force, that is, if the whole of the society were changed into the church, not only the judgment of the church would have influence on the reformation of the criminal, such as it never has now, but possibly also the crimes themselves would be incredibly diminished. And there can be no doubt that the church would look upon the criminal and the crime of the future, in many cases quite differently, and would succeed in restoring the excluded, in restraining those who plan evil, and in regenerating the fallen. It is true, said Father Zosima with a smile. The Christian society now is not ready. It is only resting on some 7 righteous men, but as they are never lacking, it will continue still unshaken in expectation of its complete transformation from a society almost heathen in character into a single, universal, and most beautiful church. So be it, so be it. Even though at the end of the ages it is ordained to come to pass. And there is no need to be troubled about times and seasons, for the secret of the times and seasons is in the wisdom of God, in his and his love. And what in human reckoning seems still afar off, may by the divine ordinance be close at hand, on the eve of its appearance. And so be it, so be it. So be it, so be it, Father Gracie repeated austerely and reverently. Strange, extremely strange, Yusuf announced, not so much with heat as with latent indignation. What strikes you as so strange? Father Yusuf inquired cautiously. Why, it's beyond anything, cried Yusuf, suddenly breaking out. The state is eliminated and the church is raised to the position of the state. It's not simply ultramontanism, it's arch-ultramontanism. It's beyond the dreams of Pope Gregory VII. You are completely misunderstanding it, said Father Paisi sternly. Understand, the church is not to be transformed into the state. That is Rome and its dream. That is the third temptation of the devil. On the contrary, the state is transformed into the church, will ascend and become a church over the whole world, which is the complete opposite of ultramontanism and Rome and your interpretation, and is only the glorious destiny ordained for the Orthodox Church. This star will arise in the east. Yusuf was significantly silent. His whole figure expressed extraordinary personal dignity. A supercilious and condescending smile played on his lips. Kailasha watched conversation stirred him profoundly. He glanced casually at Rakita, who was standing immovable in his place by the door, Snake watching intently, though with downcast eyes. But from the color in his cheeks, Alma could see that Rakita was probably no less excited, and he knew what caused his excitement. Allow me to tell you one little anecdote, gentlemen, Yusuf said impressively, with a peculiarly majestic air. Some years ago, soon after the coup d'etat of December, I happened to be calling in Paris on an extremely influential personage in the government, and I met a very interesting man in his house. This individual was not precisely a detective, but was a sort of superintendent of a whole regiment of political detectives, a rather powerful position in its own way. I was prompted by curiosity to seize the opportunity of conversation with him, and as he had not come as a visitor, but as a subordinate official bringing a special report, and as he saw the reception given me by his chief, he deigned to speak with some openness, to a certain extent only, of course. He was rather courteous than open, as Frenchmen know how to be courteous, especially to a foreigner. But I thoroughly understood him. The subject was the socialist revolutionaries who were at that time persecuted. I will quote only one most curious remark dropped by this person. We are not particularly afraid, said he, of all these socialists, anarchists, infidels, and revolutionists. We keep watch on them and know all their goings on. But there are a few peculiar men among them who believe in God and are Christians, but at the same time are socialists. These are the people we are most afraid of. They are dreadful people. The socialist who is a Christian is more to be dreaded than the socialist who is an atheist. The words struck me at the time, and now they have suddenly come back to me. Here, gentlemen, you apply them to us, and look upon us as socialists? Father Paisi asked directly, with a beating of the bush. But before Pyotr Alexandrovich could think what to answer, the door opened, and the guest, so long expected, Dmitri Fyodorovitch, came in. They had, in fact, given up expecting him, and his sudden appearance caused some surprise for a moment. End of section 10.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 11 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 2, Chapter 6. Why is such a man alive? Dmitri Fyodorovitch, a young man of 28, of medium height and agreeable countenance, looked older than his years. He was muscular and showed signs of considerable physical strength. Yet there was something not healthy in his face. It was rather thin, his cheeks were hollow, and there was an unhealthy sallowness in their color. His rather large, prominent, dark eyes had an expression of firm determination, and yet there was a vague look in them, too. Even when he was excited and talking irritably, his eyes somehow did not follow his mood, but betrayed something else, sometimes quite incongruous with what was passing. It's hard to tell what he's thinking, those who talked to him sometimes declared. People who saw something pensive and sullen in his eyes were startled by his sudden laugh, which bore witness to mirthful and light-hearted thoughts at the very time when his eyes were so gloomy. A certain strained look in his face was easy to understand at this moment. Everyone knew or had heard of the extremely restless and dissipated life which he had been leading of late, as well as of the violent anger to which he had been roused in his quarrels with his father. There were several stories current in the town about it. It is true that he was irascible by nature, of an unstable and unbalanced mind, as our Justice of the Peace, Kachelnikov, happily described him. He was stylishly and irreproachably dressed in a carefully buttoned frock coat. He wore black gloves and carried a top hat. Having only lately left the army, he still had mustaches and no beard. His dark brown hair was cropped short and combed forward on his temples. He had the long, determined stride of a military man. He stood still for a moment on the threshold and, glancing at the whole party, went straight up to the elder, guessing him to be their host. He made him a low bow and asked his blessing. Father Zosima, rising in his chair, blessed him. Dmitri kissed his hand respectfully, and with intense feeling, almost anger, he said, "Be so generous as to forgive me for having kept you waiting so long, but Smerdyakov, the valet, sent me by my father, in reply to my inquiries, told me twice over that the appointment was for one. Now I suddenly learn." "Don't disturb yourself," interposed the elder. "No matter. You are a little late. It's of no consequence. I'm extremely obliged to you and expected no less from your goodness." Saying this, Dmitri bowed once more. Then, turning suddenly towards his father, made him, too, a similarly low and respectful bow. He had evidently considered it beforehand, and made this bow in all seriousness, thinking it his duty to show his respect and good intentions. Although Fyodor Pavlovitch was taken unawares, he was equal to the occasion. In response to Dmitri's bow, he jumped up from his chair and made his son a bow as low in return. His face was suddenly solemn and impressive, which gave him a positively malignant look. Dmitri bowed generally to all present, and without a word walked to the window with his long, resolute stride, sat down on the only empty chair near Father Païssy, and bending forward, prepared to listen to the conversation he had interrupted. Dmitri's entrance had taken no more than 2 minutes, and the conversation was resumed. But this time Musov thought it unnecessary to reply to Father Païssy's persistent and almost irritable question. "Allow me to withdraw from this discussion," he observed with a certain well-bred nonchalance. "It's a subtle question, too. Here Ivan Fyodorovitch is smiling at us. He must have something interesting to say about that also. Ask him." "Nothing special, except one little remark," Ivan replied at once. "European liberals in general, and even our liberal dilettante, often mix up the final results of socialism with those of Christianity. This wild notion is, of course, a characteristic feature. But it's not only liberals and dilettante who mix up socialism and Christianity, but, in many cases, it appears, the police, the foreign police, of course, do the same. Your Paris anecdote is rather to the point, Pyotr Alexandrovitch." "I ask your permission to drop this subject altogether," Musov repeated. "I will tell you instead, gentlemen, another interesting and rather characteristic anecdote of Ivan Fyodorovitch himself. Only 5 days ago, in a gathering here, principally of ladies, he solemnly declared in argument that there was nothing in the whole world to make men love their neighbors, that there was no law of nature that man should love mankind, and that if there had been any love on earth hitherto, it was not owing to a natural law, but simply because men have believed in immortality. Ivan Fyodorovitch added, in parenthesis, that the whole natural law lies in that faith, and that if you were to destroy in mankind the belief in immortality, not only love, but every living force maintaining the life of the world would at once be dried up. Moreover, nothing then would be immoral. Everything would be lawful, even cannibalism. That's not all. He ended by asserting that for every individual like ourselves who does not believe in God or immortality, the moral law of nature must immediately be changed into the exact contrary of the former religious law, and that egoism, even to crime, must become not only lawful, but even recognized as the inevitable, the most rational, even honorable outcome of his position. From this paradox, gentlemen, you can judge of the rest of our eccentric and paradoxical friend, Ivan Fyodorovitch's theories. "Excuse me," Dmitri cried suddenly. "If I've heard aright, crime must not only be permitted, but even recognized as the inevitable and the most rational outcome of his position for every infidel. Is that so or not? Quite so, said Father Paisi. I'll remember it. Having uttered these words, Dmitri ceased speaking as suddenly as he had begun. Everyone looked at him with curiosity. Is that really your conviction as to the consequences of the disappearance of the faith in immortality? The elder asked Ivan suddenly. Yes, that was my contention. There is no virtue if there is no immortality. You are blessed in believing that, or else most unhappy. Why unhappy? Ivan asked, smiling. Because, in all probability, you don't believe yourself in the immortality of your soul, nor in what you have written yourself in your article on church jurisdiction. Perhaps you are right, but I wasn't altogether joking, Ivan suddenly and strangely confessed, flushing quickly. You were not altogether joking, that's true. The question is still fretting your heart, and not answered. But the martyr likes sometimes to divert himself with his despair, as it were driven to it by despair itself. Meanwhile, in your despair, you too divert yourself with magazine articles and discussions in society, though you don't believe your own arguments, and with an aching heart mock at them inwardly. That question you have not answered, and it is your great grief, for it clamors for an answer. But can it be answered by me, answered in the affirmative? Ivan went on asking strangely, still looking at the elder with the same inexplicable smile. If it can't be decided in the affirmative, it will never be decided in the negative. You know that that is the peculiarity of your heart, and all its suffering is due to it. But thank the Creator, who has given you a lofty heart, capable of such suffering, of thinking and seeking higher things, for our dwelling is in the heavens. God grant that your heart will attain the answer on earth, and may God bless your path. The elder raised his hand and would have made the sign of the cross over Ivan from where he stood, but the latter rose from his seat, went up to him, received his blessing, and kissing his hand, went back to his place in silence. His face looked firm and earnest. This action and all the preceding conversation, which was so surprising from Ivan, impressed everyone by its strangeness and a certain solemnity, so that all were silent for a moment, and there was a look almost of apprehension in Alyosha's face. But Musov suddenly shrugged his shoulders. And at the same moment, Fyodor Pavlovitch jumped up from his seat. Most pious and holy elder, he cried, pointing to Ivan, that is my son, flesh of my flesh, the dearest of my flesh. He is my most dutiful Karl Moor, so to speak, while this son who has just come in, Dmitri, against whom I am seeking justice from you, is the undutiful Franz Moor. They are both out of Schiller's robbers, and so I am the reigning Count von Moor. Judge and save us. We need not only your prayers, but your prophecies. Speak without buffoonery, and don't begin by insulting the members of your family, answered the elder in a faint, exhausted voice. He was obviously getting more and more fatigued, and his strength was failing. An unseemly farce which I foresaw when I came here, cried Dmitri indignantly. He too leapt up. Forgive it, Reverend Father, he added, addressing the elder. I am not a cultivated man, and I don't even know how to address you properly. But you have been deceived, and you have been too good-natured in letting us meet here. All my father wants is a scandal. Why he wants it, only he can tell. He always has some motive. But I believe I know why. They all blame me, all of them, cried Fyodor Pavlovitch in his turn. Pyotr Alexandrovitch here blames me too. You have been blaming me, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. You have. He turned suddenly to Musov, although the latter was not dreaming of interrupting him. They all accuse me of having hidden the children's money in my boots and cheated them. But isn't there a court of law? There they will reckon out for you, Dmitri Fyodorovitch. from your notes, your letters, and your agreements how much money you had, how much you have spent, and how much you have left. Why does Pyotr Alexandrovich refuse to pass judgment? Dmitri is not a stranger to him. Because they are all against me, while Dmitri Fyodorovich is in debt to me, and not a little, but some thousands, of which I have documentary proof. The whole town is echoing with his debaucheries. Where he was stationed before, he several times spent 1,000 or two for the seduction of some respectable girl. We know all about that, Dmitri Fyodorovich, in its most secret details. I'll prove it. Would you believe it, Holy Father? He has captivated the heart of the most honorable of young ladies of good family and fortune, daughter of a gallant colonel, formerly his superior officer, who had received many honors and had the Anna Order on his breast. He compromised the girl by his promise of marriage. Now she is an orphan, and here she is betrothed to him. Yet before her very eyes, he is dancing attendance on a certain enchantress. And though this enchantress has lived in, so to speak, civil marriage with a respectable man, yet she is of an independent character, an unapproachable fortress.
Thank you, Sasha
like a
Sings.
legal wife, for she
Thank
is
you very much,
virtuous,
guys.
and
Thank you.
because she is virtuous. Dmitri Fyodorovich wants to open this fortress with the golden key, and that's why he is insolent to me now, trying to get money from me, though he has wasted thousands on this enchantress already. He's continually borrowing money for the purpose. From whom do you think? Shall I say, Mitya? Be silent, cried Dmitri. Wait till I'm gone. Don't dare in my presence to asperse the good name of an honorable girl. That you should utter a word about her is an outrage, and I won't permit it. He was breathless. Mitya, Mitya, cried Fyodor Pavlovitch hysterically, squeezing out a tear. And is your father's blessing nothing to you? If I curse you, what then? Shameless hypocrite, exclaimed Dmitri furiously. He says that to his father. His father! What would he be with others? Gentlemen, only fancy. There's a poor but honorable man living here, burdened with a numerous family, a captain who got into trouble and was discharged from the army, but not publicly, not by court-martial, with no slur on his honor. And 3 weeks ago, Dmitri seized him by the beard in a tavern, dragged him out into the street, and beat him publicly. And all because he is an agent in a little business of mine. It's all a lie. Outwardly it's the truth, but inwardly a lie. Dmitri was trembling with rage. Father, I don't justify my action. Yes, I confess it publicly. I behaved like a brute to that captain, and I regret it now, and I'm disgusted with myself for my brutal rage. But this captain, this agent of yours, went to that lady whom you call an enchantress, and suggested to her from you that she should take IOUs of mine which were in your possession and should sue me for the money so as to get me into prison by means of them, if I persisted in claiming an account from you of my property. Now you reproach me for having a weakness for that lady when you yourself incited her to captivate me. She told me so to my face. She told me the story and laughed at you. You wanted to put me in prison because you were jealous of me with her, because you'd begun to force your attentions upon her. And I know all about that, too. She laughed at you for that as well. You hear? She laughed at you as she described it. So here you have this man, this father, who reproaches his profligate son. Gentlemen, forgive my anger, but I foresaw that this crafty old man would only bring you together to create a scandal. I had come to forgive him if he held out his hand, to forgive him and ask forgiveness. But as he has just this minute insulted not only me, but an honorable young lady for whom I feel such reverence that I dare not take her name in vain, I have made up my mind to show up his game, though he is my
Guys,
father. He could not go on. His
I'm
eyes were
hungry. I
glittering,
need to
and he
get up.
breathed with difficulty. But everyone in the cell was stirred. All except Father Zosima got up from their seats uneasily. The monks looked austere, but waited for guidance from the elder. He sat still, pale, not from excitement, but from the weakness of disease. An imploring smile lighted up his face. From time to time, he raised his hand as though to check the storm. And, of course, a gesture from him would have been enough to end the scene. But he seemed to be waiting for something and watched them intently, as though trying to make out something which was not perfectly clear to him. At last, Musaf felt completely humiliated and disgraced. "We are all to blame for this scandalous scene," he said hotly. "But I did not foresee it when I came, though I knew with whom I had to deal. This must be stopped at once. Believe me, your reverence, I had no precise knowledge of the details that have just come to light. I was unwilling to believe them, and I learned for the first time a father is jealous of his son's relations with a
Man,
woman of
this
misbehavior and intrigues
guys,
with the
everybody
creature
give
to
a
get
thumbs
the
up to
blood of
Assassin's
his
Creed.
son. This is the company in which I
Positive
have been forced
energy,
to be
positive
present.
vibe.
I was deceived. I declare to you all that I
You
was as
wake
much
me up.
deceived as anyone.
Thank you very much.
Dmitri Fyodorovich,
I appreciate
yelled
that.
Fyodor Pavlovich suddenly in an unnatural voice. "If you were not my son, I would challenge you this instant to a duel, with pistols at 3 paces, across a handkerchief," he ended, stamping with both feet. With old liars who have been acting all their lives, there are moments when they enter so completely into their part, they tremble, shed tears of emotion in earnest, though at that very moment, or a second later, they are able to whisper to themselves, "You know you are lying, you shameless old sinner. You're acting now, in spite of your holy wrath." Dmitri frowned painfully and looked with unutterable contempt at his father. I thought, he said in a soft and, as it were, controlled voice, that I was coming to my native place with the angel of my heart, my betrothed, to cherish his old age, and I find nothing but a depraved profligate, a despicable clown. "A duel!" yelled the old wretch again, breathless and spluttering at each syllable. "And you, Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov, let me tell you that there has never been in all your family a loftier and more honest, you hear, more honest woman than this creature, as you have dared to call her. And you, Dmitri Fyodorovich, have abandoned your betrothed for that creature, so you must yourself have thought that your betrothed couldn't hold a candle to her. That's the woman called a creature." "Shameful," broke from Father Yosef. "Shameful and disgraceful," Kalganov, flushing crimson, cried in a boyish voice, trembling with emotion. He had been silent till that moment. "Why is such a man alive?" Dmitri, beside himself with rage, growled in a hollow voice, hunching up his shoulders till he looked almost deformed. "Tell me, can he be allowed to go on defiling the earth?" He looked round at everyone and pointed at the old man. He spoke evenly and deliberately. "Listen, listen, monks, to the parricide," cried Fyodor Pavlovich, rushing up to Father Yosef. "That's the answer to your shameful. What is shameful? That creature, that woman of loose behavior, is perhaps holier than you are yourselves, you monks who are seeking salvation. She fell perhaps in her youth, ruined by her environment, but she loved much, and Christ himself forgave the woman who loved much." "It was not for such love Christ forgave her," broke impatiently from the gentle Father Yosef. "Yes, it was for such, monks, it was. You save your souls here eating cabbage, and think you are the righteous. You eat a gudgeon a day, and you think you bribe God with gudgeon." "This is unendurable," was heard on all sides in the cell. But this unseemly scene was cut short in a most unexpected way. Father Zosima rose suddenly from his seat, almost distracted with anxiety for the elder and everyone else. Alyosha succeeded, however, in supporting him by the arm. Father Zosima moved towards Dmitri, and reaching him, sank on his knees before him. Alyosha thought that he had fallen from weakness, but this was not so. The elder distinctly and deliberately bowed down at Dmitri's feet till his forehead touched the floor. Alyosha was so astounded that he failed to assist him when he got up again. There was a faint smile on his lips. "Goodbye. Forgive me, all of you," he said, bowing on all sides to his guests. Dmitri stood for a few moments in amazement. Bowing down to him, what did it mean? Suddenly, he cried aloud, "Oh God!" hid his face in his hands, and rushed out of the room. All the guests flocked out after him, in their confusion, not saying goodbye or bowing to their host. Only the monks went up to him again for a blessing. What did it mean, falling at his feet like that? Was it symbolic or what? Said Fyodor Pavlovitch, suddenly quieted and trying to reopen conversation without venturing to address anybody in particular. They were all passing out of the precincts of the hermitage at the moment. "I can't answer for a madhouse and for madmen," Musov answered at once ill-humoredly. "But I will spare myself your company, Fyodor Pavlovitch, and trust me forever. Where's that monk?" That monk, that is, the monk who had invited them to dine with the superior, did not keep them waiting. He met them as soon as they came down the steps from the elder's cell, as though he had been waiting for them all the time. "Reverend Father, kindly do me a favor. Convey my deepest respect to the Father Superior. Apologize for me, personally, Musov, to his reverence, telling him that I deeply regret that owing to unforeseen circumstances, I am unable to have the honor of being present at his table, greatly as I should desire to do so," Musov said irritably to the monk. "And that unforeseen circumstance, of course, is myself," Fyodor Pavlovitch cut in immediately. "Do you hear, Father? This gentleman doesn't want to remain in my company, or else he'd come at once. And you shall go, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. Pray, go to the Father Superior, and good appetite to you. I will decline, and not you. Home, home, I'll eat at home. I don't feel equal to it here, Pyotr Alexandrovitch, my amiable relative." "I am not your relative, and never have been, you contemptible man." "I said it on purpose to madden you, because you always disclaim the relationship, though you really are a relation in spite of your shuffling. Prove it by the church calendar. As for you, Yvonne, stay if you like. I'll send the horses for you later. Propriety requires you to go to the Father Superior, Pyotr Alexandrovitch, to apologize for the disturbance we've been making. Is it true that you are going home? Aren't you lying?" "Pyotr Alexandrovitch, how could I dare after what's happened? Forgive me, gentlemen. I was carried away, and upset, besides. And indeed, I am ashamed. Gentlemen, one man has the heart of Alexander of Macedon, and another the heart of the little dog Fido. Mine is that of the little dog Fido. I am ashamed. After such an escapade, how can I go to dinner to gobble up the monastery's sauces? I am ashamed. I can't. You must excuse me." "The devil only knows. What if he deceives us?" thought Musov, still hesitating, and watching the retreating buffoon with distrustful eyes. The latter turned round, and, noticing that Musov was watching him, waved him a kiss. "Well, are you coming to the superior?" Musov asked Ivan abruptly. "Why not? I was especially invited yesterday." "Unfortunately, I feel myself compelled to go to this confounded dinner," said Musov with the same irritability, regardless of the fact that the monk was listening. "We ought at least to apologize for the disturbance and explain that it was not our doing. What do you think?" "Yes, we must explain that it wasn't our doing. Besides, Father won't be there," observed Ivan. "Well, I should hope not. Confound this dinner." They all walked on, however. The monk listened in silence. On the road through the copse, he made one observation, however, that the Father Superior had been waiting a long time, and that they were more than half an hour late. He received no answer. Musov looked with hatred at Ivan. Here he is, going to the dinner as though nothing had happened, he thought, a brazen face and the conscience of a Karamazov. End of section 11.
To listen to the complete audiobook for free, check Amazon Audible. Link can be found in the description or the first comment.
Section 12 of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Recording by Bruce Peary. Book 2, Chapter 7. A young man bent on a career. Alyosha helped Father Zosima to his bedroom and seated him on his bed. It was a little room furnished with the bare necessities. There was a narrow iron bedstead with a strip of felt for a mattress. In the corner under the icons was a reading desk with the cross and the gospel lying on it. The elder sank exhausted on the bed. His eyes glittered and he breathed hard. He looked intently at Alyosha as though considering something. Go, my dear boy, go. Porphyry is enough for me. Make haste, you are needed there. Go and wait at the Father Superior's table. Let me stay here, Alyosha entreated. You are more needed there. There is no peace there. You will wait and be of service. If evil spirits rise up, repeat a prayer, and remember my son. The elder liked to call him that. This is not the place for you in the future. When it is God's will to call me, leave the monastery. Go away for good. Alyosha started. What is it? This is not your place for the time. I bless you for great service in the world. Yours will be a long pilgrimage, and you will have to take a wife, too. You will have to bear all before you come back. There will be much to do, but I don't doubt of you, and so I send you forth. Christ is with you. Do not abandon him, and he will not abandon you. You will see great sorrow, and in that sorrow you will be happy. This is my last message to you. In sorrow, seek happiness. Work, work unceasingly. Remember my words, for although I shall talk with you again, not only my days, but my hours are numbered. Alyosha's face again betrayed strong emotion. The corners of his mouth quivered. What is it again? Father Zosima asked, smiling gently. The worldly may follow the dead with tears, but here we rejoice over the Father who is departing. We rejoice and pray for him. Leave me, I must pray. Go and make haste. Be near your brothers, and not near one only, but near both. Father Zosima raised his hand to bless him. Alyosha could make no protest, though he had a great longing to remain. He longed, moreover, to ask the significance of his bowing to Dmitri. The question was on the tip of his tongue, but he dared not ask it. He knew that the elder would have explained it unasked if he had thought fit, but evidently it was not his will. That action had made a terrible impression on Alyosha. He believed blindly in its mysterious significance. Mysterious and perhaps awful. As he hastened out of the hermitage precincts to reach the monastery in time to serve at the Father Superior's dinner, he felt a sudden pang at his heart and stopped short. He seemed to hear again Father Zosima's words, foretelling his approaching end. What he had foretold so exactly must infallibly come to pass. Alyosha believed that implicitly. But how could he be left without him? How could he live without seeing and hearing him? Where should he go? He had told him not to weep and to leave the monastery. Good God! It was long since Alyosha had known such anguish. He hurried through the copse that divided the monastery from the hermitage, and, unable to bear the burden of his thoughts, he gazed at the ancient pines beside the path. He had not far to go, about 500 paces. He expected to meet no one at that hour, but at the first turn of the path, he noticed Rakitin. He was waiting for someone. Are you waiting for me? Asked Alyosha, overtaking him. Yes, grinned Rakitin. You were hurrying to the Father Superior, I know. he has a banquet. There's not been such a banquet since the superior entertained the bishop and General Pahatov. Do you remember? I shan't be there, but you go and hand the sauces. Tell me one thing, Alexei. What does that vision mean? That's what I want to ask you. What vision? That bowing to your brother, Dmitri. And didn't he tap the ground with his forehead, too? You speak of Father Zosima? Yes, of Father Zosima. Tapped the ground? Ah, an irreverent expression. Well, what of it? Anyway, what does that vision mean? I don't know what it means, Misha. I knew he wouldn't explain it to you. There's nothing wonderful about it, of course, only the usual holy mummery. But there was an object in the performance. All the pious people in the town will talk about it and spread the story through the province, wondering what it meant. To my thinking, the old man really has a keen nose. He sniffed a crime. Your house stinks of it. What crime?
Guys, I gotta go.
Rakitin evidently had something he was eager to speak of.
Bye bye.